Our escape pod was destroyed and you died. Lucky for you that you have been reincarnated through an insurance claim. Warp drive active. You clumsy pilot. The capacitor is empty. You clumsy pilot. Docking request accepted.
Second day of the second weekend of Anger Games 5. I'm your host, Zurok, or Zoo, and I'm joined here on the desk here for our opening panel by November and Wingnut. Just a reminder for the audience, there will be channel points that you can obviously use for predictions. Try and get those high numbers, see if you can redeem some skins for yourselves, and feel free to also make use of the channel commands, exclamation mark rules, one word, or exclamation mark brackets, one word, to get a copy of the rules that the players will be using, along with seeing when your teams will be playing who against and what time. So we do also have a confirmation of the prizes, but we'll be breaking down to that a bit later. For now, first we're going to be starting off on some highlights from the previous day, November. Are there any particular matches you want to talk about that happened yesterday?
Yeah, so one that I found to be really interesting was the match between Nanofiber Tokens and Turbo Feet of Glory, which ended up being a Gila mirror match. But I think it's good because it really highlights the importance of the kinds of ship selections that you make. So with the nanofiber tokens team, they bought a Claymore, a Scimitar, 3 Gearless, a Hyena, and a Skybreaker. And on the turbo feed side, they came with a Sleipnir, a Scimitar, 3 Gearless, a Kitsune, and a Molus. And I think the real big difference here was the selection of support frigates. The Hyena provides webs and paints and utility that you just don't really get from the frigates on the turbo feed side. Like, you can damp someone down, but eventually they're going to be in range and they're going to apply to you. And so I think that little detail, like, in there and how you make those selections and what you're planning to do really makes the difference when it comes to those matches.
And I do also have to note that was the game which Nanofiber Tokens, NFTs, present in the tournament here, actually managed to kill the Kitsune and the Molus on the Turbo Feudal Glory side within pretty much the same second. Pretty much eliminating that Kitsune and Molus within the 32 and 33rd second of the match there. So while it is a great ship choice by NFT, they also did some amazing tactics there. I think doing a combination of assigning drones to Hyena and probably splitting those rapid clips, making great use there. Unfortunately, Turbofeed also made use of an AC Sleipnir there, which I think didn't work too well, especially against the Kaiden Healers. And like you were pointing as well, the lack of the Hyena there. But Wingnut, any kind of match that stood out to you yesterday?
There was the I can't remember who it is anymore, but it was the double Fly Killer Mirror match. The other one I liked as well, as much as it was against my team, so I was sad we lost.
So the double
Ramrod
fly
Reloaded
killer
was-
match, that was match 40 of Noor versus Javka, which Javka actually ended up winning. It was pretty much a mirror, except Noor took Osprey Navy, whereas Javka took Caracal and double Jackdaw
That's
with no, yeah,
That's
that
exactly
one.
it. And the reason why I like that one because like Fly Kill is obviously a time and distance sort of comp. You run away, you kill the small stuff, and you just keep running. But when Fly Killer meets Fly Killer, it can turn into the biggest bloodbath you've ever seen. Like, it turns into a rush comp versus a rush comp, because it just ships die left and right in seconds because everything's able to kill each other. So I love that match because it's just what you expected to fight gets turned entirely on its head, which is great.
For myself, right now, I'm also trying to think. I did especially like the NFT Turbo match as well. I actually like both the matches you guys pointed out, especially how close the Javka Noor came. I think contrary to the ships being tanky and it being, like you say, rather like a hard striking comp, actually ended up being quite close. But if we have to point out one of the more skillful matches I think that happened yesterday, well, it didn't have that wow factor, unfortunately, for the audience. Props to Prajola Capital Supremacy for winning over Volt B. Actually managed to scare that. They brought in the Torp Widow, which they were keeping at range. We actually had quite the team set up with a nice brawl happening in the middle with Vidmax and the Shacks going against each other. Logi, both teams fielding the Guardian on either side of the field, with Volt B bringing the Rook and Prajola bringing the Widow. One ECM ship on both sides. But it ended up just coming down to 19 points scored on the Prajola versus only 13 for Volt B. So Prajola actually ended up taking that with a point score on time. Showing that even though we thought they got a bit lucky on that win against, I believe, Ramrod, with the Bargas slipping away out of the clutch of the Shack, still showing that they are quite skillful in their execution of these comps. But before we start talking about what's coming up for the day here, we're just gonna we do have a confirmed prize breakdown here for what the teams will be playing. I won't go into exact details on what teams will be getting, but we have a confirmed prize pool here of about 95,000 plex that the teams will be playing for here. First place getting roughly 34% of that, so that's about 32,000 plex going to first place. The rest of the breakdown will be published on our Discord. Feel free to use that chat command as well. !AG Discord. All the details for what the teams are playing for is there, along with the skins that they will be getting for wins. So every win gets them 7 skins. The winners brackets gets 2 battleships, 2 cruisers, and 3 frigate victory skins, whereas the losers get 1 less battleship skin, but 3 cruiser skins. So that's 1 battleship, 3 cruisers, 3 frigates. So 7 skins, just 1 less battleship, 1 more cruiser for the loser brackets. So that's a lot to come into. November. Today we're just going to be seeing elimination matches. So everyone that's losing today is out of the tournament. Are you excited for any matches that we're going to be seeing coming up today?
You know what? I'm going to say I'm really interested, I think, looking at it just to see this first match play out. Just because paper numbers
Yeah,
has
NFT versus paper numbers.
Yeah. Sorry, NFT versus paper numbers. Paper numbers for the last 2 matches they've played have bought very similar comps. Leshak's both times. NFT for the last 2 matches they have played have both bought Gilas in both of those matches. This time around, the Leshak is banned, so paper numbers has to do something different. However, the Gila is not banned. NFT, having played 2 matches already, are going to be quite comfortable with that. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out and how the paper numbers team adapts to not having the Leshak available to them, like ready to go, like they used to from their previous matches. So it'll be an interesting way to kind of see how teams like adjust to the bans that are there. Like clearly, NFT has gone, we don't want them to have this Leshak, so they've taken it out. Whereas paper numbers, maybe they think they have a way that they can deal with Gilas. So that will be super interesting to see because the Gila is OP.
Speaking about the Gila, I actually believe every time the Gila has been unbanned, either both teams have brought it or neither team has brought it. I don't think we've seen a one-sided Gila match yet, have we?
I think you're right. I'm just having a look here, but I think the Gila is so strong that if it's available to you, like why would you not take it?
Well, we had that very first match on the first day where it was Tempest versus I forget who. I'll quickly bring it up here, but they both teams opted to. It was Tempest versus Javka. Gila was unbanned. Neither team brought it, and Tempest showcased their triple battlecruiser comp. And hey, so we haven't seen one team opt to bring a Gila and the other team not. So we haven't really seen any, so I say Gila counters in play yet. But Wingnut, I'm not sure if there's anything you're looking for. Maybe one of these teams which have been knocked down from the winners bracket yesterday.
Well, speaking of this next match coming up, I said that they didn't ban the Gila. They actually had multiple chances to do it because they have 5 bans. They had 2 duplicate bans, and both times neither side picked the Gila. So they had a lot of options. So obviously they don't care. They're either going to bring it or they don't give a damn. So
Those double bans being Barghest and Chris from those sides. So yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. Widow and Blackbird is still open. Scorpion's still open. So ECM's still on the grid. Although Gillas sometimes don't really care about that too much. For myself, this first rounds of knockout matches, nothing there I'm particularly looking forward to, although they all probably going to be exciting. I do want to see particularly how match number 49, aggressively mid-tier, and later match 42, Volt B is going to be doing. So Volt B is going to be going against the winners of either Rusty Hyenas or Tournament Team. Well, aggressively mid-tier will be going against the winners between Scarf Experts and Kaiden Onichon. So those are the kind of 2 matches that I'm looking forward to, the winners playing against those ones. Just a reminder again, every match we're going to be seeing today is an elimination match. So at the end of today, there should only be 8 teams remaining, and every team that's remaining today still in the tournament will be part of that Plex prize breakout of 95,000 Lex. But now I'm gonna try and interpret these graphs, see if I can understand this. Hopefully I can. But we're gonna play a bit of guessing games here with my co-hosts right now. So
Okay.
November. If you had to take a guess here, what would you kind of say is one of the more actual survivable ships in the game? So I'm gonna ignore the couple of these at the top, which being either niche picks, one also. So this is a ship that I think has been consistently picked, but oddly enough has not been dying. Kind of take a guess. I'm giving you a quick clue. It's in the control category.
The Armageddon.
Armageddon is actually quite. I think it dies quite often, to be honest, even though it's quite a threat. But it's actually the Rook that I'm looking at here right now.
That makes perfect sense. It's hard to catch. It can sit far away. Teams have to get through the other side to get to it, and it can jam off people who are trying to tackle it. So that makes a lot of sense.
So it looks like the
and
Rook's.
DT resist profile helps as well.
If I'm hopefully I can understand this, but if it looks like the Rook's roughly picked, I'd say 80% of the time and living roughly 90% of the match time. So it either lives most of the match or dies near the end of the match, if it dies at all. Closely followed, I'd say by a pick that actually counts. It's going to be a battleships. Wingnut, can you guess which one of the battleships is one of the more survivable battleships that we have? It's a DPS oriented battleship.
Ah, interesting. I'm just gonna go Hyperion because I'm lazy, but my brain's also saying Abaddon.
Hyperion actually is pretty much survival. I don't think anyone's actually killed the Hyperion if I'm looking at this. I might be wrong, but
There was one before yesterday that didn't
yeah,
die as well.
I will try and see if we can get some corrections. But yes, Hyperion is pretty much unkillable. Obviously, the Macarial still has 100% win rate. But one of the more DPS oriented ships as well, following close behind Hyperion, is also the Shack there as well. Either the Shack lives pretty much, it lives, I'd say, about 70% of the time, or it ends up only dying at the near the end of the match as well. So again, we can see why these teams pick these ships, and then obviously with the smaller teams we have here, 7 versus 10. I mean, the AT being 10 sized and Angry Games being 7. These chunky battleships with their new HP bonuses definitely have a lot more survivability in them if teams do not focus them right off the bat. But we do have the teams lined up here for the next match already. We're going to be seeing our first game for today. It's going to be nanofiber tokens versus paper numbers. Once again, as Wingnut has mentioned, these teams have gone for quite the banning spree. Both teams opting to ban the Barghest and Curse, with the Shack and Scimitar thrown in there as well. Bonus ban for nanofiber have been on Nearest Rook, with paper numbers doing the Armageddon Hyperion. So we're going to see what these teams can do in our first match of the day as we throw it to the arena to the commentator duo of Jujek and Jintan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first match of this weekend of the Sunday of the Anger Games. And we've got something we have not yet seen so far in this tournament, which is someone attempting to bring out a counter to the healer comp. And for paper numbers, that is Balgorn, Oracle, Augur Navy issue, and a ton of control alongside that with their Draugr, Blackbird, and Mala. What have NFT brought here, Dujak?
They have brought a Claymore, a Drake Navy issue, 2 Helas, an Osprey, a Jackdaw, and a Hyena, opting for kind of a hybrid between the Hela rush comps that we've seen and heavy missile kiting with control. They're going to be capable of killing small ships very easily while not skimping on the DPS.
Yeah, it's going to be curious to see how that Blackbird goes because they have so much projection here on the Nanofiber Tokens team. They should be able to slap this Blackbird no matter where it sits on the grid. And it's going to be a question of whether or not Parkbank in that Guardian can keep him alive. You can see drones going out here, getting applied to things, but just getting... Oh my god, is that an MJD play from Ryferson? He's sitting in the middle of their backlines.
Middle of the backline here, and he's ready to put his newts onto anything within range and put massive disruption on the Nanofiber token team.
That happened so quickly, I didn't even see it. Look at him. He's on top of that Osprey, newting out and webbing it down. And it's going down quickly here. It's not going to be able to escape. He's going to be able to take the logistics off the field almost immediately here from the Nanofiber Tokens team. And they're not even putting DPS on him because all of their drones are sitting on Pice in that Mala.
Yeah, Lawrence Winston is not long for this world. And if this pays off, this might actually be the play of the tournament so far.
Wow, what an incredible opening there for paper numbers. Yeah, there we go. That's the Osprey down. Now, all of these ships from Nanofiber Tokens, they need to scatter out. They need to make sure that they don't get caught and die alongside their friend there. But it looks like Tyson Aardvark, he's been caught as well by this Balgorn. He's not going to have any injectors. And with a couple of cycles of his newts, he's not going to have any hardness either. Look at how fast his shield is dropping.
Yeah, the Nanofiber Token are trying to get Jalthi of the Draugr down as well, but he is being wrapped up handily by the Guardian of Parkbank, and they've just taken away the Shield of Maddox Overt, and they might be swapping over to the Aug Navy to try to get some damage off the field.
Yeah, looks like they're just trying to take tackle ships off the field here, trying to snipe stuff down because that healer in Tyson, he's in structure now, and he is going down. This is crazy. 2 kills off the back here for NFT, and this Augur Navy issue is only in about half armor, and you know, we've seen how tanky these ships are. They can hold on for a long time as they get chipped through structure, and NFT has practically no sustain left on grid here.
Yeah, that... they were not expecting, I think, to lose their logistics so fast and in such a brutal manner, having a Balgorn just appear on top of it, nuding it out and webbing it. And two Gila or Gila down and two ships down. That's just a very tough uphill battle for Nanofiber Tokens to try to get anything out of this match from this point on.
Yeah, the only way they can really win from here is if they start kiting out, if they're successfully able to split that Guardian away from the rest of his team and keep that Balgon from doing all that much. It doesn't look like he has any prop mod other than that MJD, so after this play, he's completely left on his own. He's just got to kind of angle himself, try and get off another MJD to get into position later on. There goes the Draugr. Okay, so they've finally been able to use those drones and the application, but Chadwick here, he's going low in shields as well. They're putting some DPS finally on this Blackbird as well. Oh man, this is a tough one here from Nanofiber Tokens.
The Balgorn is actually nearing 700 meters per second. I just think he was a little bit slow to pulse his prop on to get in range of more stuff to web. But the CEO Oracle is taking big chunks of damage now. Maybe they can get something done before Shivan and the Jackdaw dies.
Yeah, I don't know. Nanofiber Tokens, they still have room to come back into this match, but it's going to take some incredible piloting here because all of the ships left on the field here for paper numbers, they're slow. They do have a decent amount of projection with that Oracle and that Balgorn, but they're going to struggle to catch anything. I can't see if anything's tackled just right now, other than Chadwick. But even he's actually making he's not tackled at all either. He's just burning away towards one of those micro jump drive beacons himself. Probably going to try and make a play to escape the damage too.
Yeah, another thing that is...
Look at Captain there in the Blackbird. He's going so low into armor.
Yeah, he must have gotten some successful jams off and had to eat a couple of missile volleys to save his friend, the CEO. And all the lasers on the paper numbers team are very good into a primarily shield tanked setup for Nanofiber Tokens. They're getting a lot out of their damage.
Yeah, practically all of the DPS that's applying here from paper numbers is their own drones, which are just swarming over, just trying to tickle away at the Nanofiber Tokens team. We've got 5 minutes left on the match here, but Nanofiber Tokens, they can't just kite this one out. They need to land kills here if they want to win the match, especially as Chadwick looks like he's finally getting applied to again as, oh my god, Roferson's made another play. He's MJD right next to Chadwick.
Yeah, Chadwick is half structure now, and there's nothing that can save him, really. He's going to go down imminently, and Captain Shinken and the Blackbird is being repped up again, and the CEO is probably going to be fine up against half a Hilo worth of damage and Claymore.
Yeah, you can see DPS just getting spread across the field here. Nicholas, it doesn't look like he's caught, but it's going to take so much. These healers, they're not as slow, they're not as fast as you think, especially when you've got the range of pulses just hammering down against your hull. Oh my god, what an incredible set of plays there from Riferson, though. You've got to say, it takes so much skill and so much balls to use an MJD like that, because it only takes one misclick, one bump, and you can send yourself firing out of the arena and across the boundary.
Yeah, I guess that now that he's MJD'd onto 2 separate targets, gotten them killed, and secured a dominant victory for his team, the one remaining thing he has to do is point that out of the arena and try to go for the best boundary violation to date.
The long jump record. I mean, I think he's already achieved that pretty much so far. Incredible play from a ship that we were just talking about on the desk earlier as well. The Balgorn is such a powerful ship, but we haven't seen it brought out a huge amount because it costs a significant amount of points, 33 points, and it doesn't have quite the same amount of DPS as the other pirate battleships that can be brought out to bear. I've got to say credit to Asura in this Hyena, though. He has survived for an incredibly large amount of time with no logistics on the field. Normally, the Hyena is one of the first things that tries to get swatted once the logistics on one of these kiting comps goes down, because it is so powerful with its ranged webs.
Yeah, one of the main issues with the Balgorn, at least when compared to the Armageddon, which is the most natural comparison, is the fact that it does not have a range bonus on those newts. But do you really need a range bonus when you can jump your ship 100 kilometers instead? Like, the power of those newts right onto a Tech 1 logistics, it's going to dry out that cap in seconds.
Yeah, I guess now it's just a question of if they can catch Ovix in time for the end of the match, whilst drones just slowly grind him down. He's getting pinched towards the corner of this arena, though. You can see all the ships slowly converging on him.
Yeah, he's certainly gonna show off the Tech 2 Minotaur shield.
Oh,
with his
another
lasers.
MJD player from Ryferson just to land beside him.
Yeah, he's going to get those webs onto Ovix, and
Oh my
you can
god.
see his speed dropping down below 300 meters per second as we speak.
Oh my god, what an absolute Chad move there. He is going for that MVP. He's going for the MVP. He's going for the plays of the weekend. He's going for every single award that's up for grabs, I've got to say.
Except for dying quickly in a battleship, I guess. Wow, like, I cannot express how cool it is to see people really using the MJD to its full potential.
Yeah, that is not something you see very often. It's going to be interesting now to see how Paper Numbers opponents further on in the brackets sort to adapt to this. I know I've seen a couple of people try and use basically suicide interceptors and things of that nature in my scrims to prevent this sort of play.
Yeah, when you make your next top 5 best plays of the tournament video, are you going to put Ryferson in 3 spots, 1 for each jump?
I don't know. We'll have to see if any other teams can kind of keep up with the high bar that Ryferson has set for this match. But let's throw it back to the studio and let's talk about what else we might be seeing coming up.
And welcome back. Absolutely fantastic play there by Paper Numbers. Definitely right off the bat, I think NFT weren't expecting that opening from their opponents. Probably landing on grid, feeling confident with their Gila setup there. November, we spoke now about, the Gilas, either both teams bring them, both teams don't. And now we finally see that one-sided match. Any opening thoughts here on what we just witnessed?
Yeah, I guess the counter to Gilas is to just man up and MJD your control ships directly into the middle of them so they can't run away from you. That was obviously a planned start to that match, I feel like, and it paid off. Rafism landed directly in the middle of them and was able to immediately tackle the logistics before it could get away. And once that was done, it made things a lot easier for their team. I'm very impressed.
Just kudos to him, just to, so that the audience knows the kind of tolerances that he'll be working with. MJD puts him, launches him 100 kilometers, but his webs, without any links, keep that in mind. Basic T2 webs will only get him up to about 20 kilometers. Heated will get to 26. He also doesn't have the range on the newts as well, so his newts will have 20 kilometer plus 10 kilometer fall off. So doing an excellent job to land those MJDs and still be a threat. Wingnut, how do you feel about seeing Gillis finally smashed like that?
I kind of knew it was coming, that people weren't banning. Obviously, knew they had a plan. But honestly, that entire match was about the Balgorn all the way through. Like, that is a masterful way of flying the Balgorn. Like, that's how you do it. You play aggressive control with it. You don't slow boat around the arena, like with a T-Rex reaching out going, please. That was so perfectly like, Ryferson, man. Like, I bow down to you. That was well played. Bravo. That's beautiful.
That was an excellent shot. That was also a gun ball. I think we spoke about this on the panel a bit before yesterday, where we were a bit unsure, gun ball, especially, getting these hybrid, these ships, the Armageddon and the Belgorn, generally seen as dedicated towards their neutralizing or Nosferatu roles, but, mixing those weapon systems in, but absolutely to fantastic effect today. One thing I do want to know a bit there, I think we saw one of the Gilas get caught there right after the Osprey died. November, I'm not too sure if you know what the tactic called starbursting is, and what was the Gila maybe doing wrong lingering around his Osprey buddy?
So, starbursting is the idea of all of the ships in the group effectively exploding outwards in different directions in order to get away and not get tackled and suffer the same fate as the ship that has just died. by not moving away quickly enough and sitting next to the Osprey, that just enables the Balgorn, which has a 20% bonus to its web range as well, to effectively reach out and touch you if you don't move away quickly enough. And that was probably a mistake.
Yeah, it's pretty much you gotta cut your losses. You gotta know when your buddy is gonna be dying and start preparing for what's coming later. I don't think it would have changed things too much. We obviously saw this expert play, so who knows? Running away probably would have made it even easier for him to jump on top of them. But again, I don't think there's too much more we can say here on this. One of you guys wanted to point something out, but overall, fantastic plays there. I need to say.
I think the one difference there, sorry,
No, go ahead.
The reason why the gun barrel is more common than for instance, a missile Kaiden is the price difference. You're spending so much more on the Balgorn, it has to pull its weight. So you're pretty much required to fit guns, unless you've got some really ripping like support wing that's got like a lot of DPS. It has to do it. It's too much investment.
Well, luckily, the Balgorn also has bonus towards gun damage, whereas the Geddon only has the drone damage bonus.
Yep.
But also, I think another thing we could point out is just the combination of the Wingnut. I think you were maybe actually talking about it. The combination of a newt ship and an ECM ship.
Oh yeah, we've seen some interesting setups at the moment, and they really do complement each other pretty well. But the one thing I would like we're seeing is we're seeing Guardians paired with ECM boats, and they've had a pretty high success rate. And it's just a really, especially if it's a Rook, it's an incredibly painful nut to crack. You've got a T2 resisted ship with amazing logi and painful jams. That gives me nightmares thinking about stuff like that. And then add a newt ship like a Geddon or even a Lashak with heavy newts in it, and it's like that is a nightmare scenario because there's not much you can do about it.
Well, I mean, speaking now about that combination, speaking of November, you care to take a guess at what the most picked logistic ship is thus far?
I was going to say the Scimitar, but I think that's been banned, so I'm going to go with the Onichon.
And Hyenas is definitely our top pick. Picked 29 times. This is including the feeders, which is part of the main tournament. Followed by the Rediva at 15, Zarm at 15 as well. So the Rediva and the Zarm tying up there. The Scimitar is only picked 13 times, so still quite a lot, but definitely our clear winner here, so Hyenas. But the interesting, the Guardian is one of the least picked T2. Well, I mean, I'm going to exclude the Basilisk, but one of the least picked T2, at least for the armor side. So 11 times, whereas the Blackbird at 22 times. So I think that's also what Wingnut was alluding to here, why these ECM control matchups are standing out. And one of the big highlights is what we were referring to yesterday when we saw that match of Patrol Capital versus Volt B. Both teams bringing the Guardian, both teams bringing an ECM ship, and just witnessing that control. And I think as Wingnut's going to say, Zarm is shit, and the Guardian showcases why it can just do better. But
Weirdly enough, speaking of ECM and Zarm, that's one of the few times I think Zarm can work, especially if you've got like a Widow.
You gave flack for someone who had an ECM Zarm comp yesterday. You 100%.
Come on, this is me. This is me here. I'm a talking idiot. Like I say a lot of dumb stuff, but like between either high armor buffer ships or having a giant Widow works for Zarm, but not much else.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to talk a bit here about Game 42 that's coming up. We're going to see Rusty Hyenas team versus tournament teams. So teams versus team. So Rusty Hyenas banning the Curse, Gila Barghast. Tournament team banning the Zarm, the Shack, Armageddon. I'm going to say nothing too interesting on that side of things, but we are going to talk a bit about the matches that they had yesterday. So November, yesterday we saw Rusty Hyenas actually take the win over Ultramarines, but I think Rusty was one of the teams that they brought in Hyperion, but they comboed it with a mega navy issue. So if you recall that match, we might have spoken about it a bit before, but do you feel the mega navy actually had a kind of spot there with the Hyperion?
I think it did for what they were trying to do. I'm looking back at the bans previously, and I feel like they maybe had a slightly different plan that they wanted to run, and maybe the ship they wanted to use got banned out, and so they substituted in the Mega, or alternatively, maybe it was a points related issue. So we saw a tournament team also bring double Hyperions, so very similar ideas. So it's also possible that the points worked out better for Rusty Hyenas if they bought the Mega and the Hype instead of maybe 2 Hyperions.
Well, speaking about the Hyperion now, Win, I know it's your favorite ship, and you correctly guessed that it's pretty much the battleships that's been living to win absolutely every single match it's been coming in. If we see a Hyperion versus Hyperion setup here, Hyperion either side, what do you think is going to be the edge that gives one team, something that's going to give the one team the edge over the other team's Hyperion?
One for sure, because the problem with the Hyperion is that if you don't kill it soon, it will tank most of your comp. It has the ability to essentially effectively tank itself near permanently. So it's very much like you have to kill the support wing, or alternatively have a very good support wing to break it quickly. So it will honestly, it doesn't depend on the Hyperion, it depends on the entire comp around it. It really does. You could bring a Nuke Geddon and just turn it off. Or you could bring, a bunch of like Draugrs and Vedmax and just rip through it in time. It's a very interesting one. You have to be ready for it, effectively, is the way to look at it.
Well, we're going to be seeing if some action happens today. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see the matchup exactly like what I was hoping for here. Could still be wrong as the final ships are arriving, but we will be going to this elimination match. It's going to be game 42 of Rusty Hyenas team versus Tournament team, and we will be heading to the arena back with the commentating duo of Jujek and Jintan.
Welcome to the arena for the second match of today. We have the Rusty Hyena team against the Tournament team. And the Rusty Hyenas have brought a Megathron Navy, Hyperion, Rodiva, Vedmak, Og Navy, Pontifex, and a Punisher.
Yeah, meanwhile, the tournament team here have brought a really interesting setup using a core of 3 Triglavian DPS ships supplemented by the Harbinger Navy issue. And we're seeing the Drekvac again, and this is one of the ships we haven't seen a huge amount of, but it's been incredibly effective when we have seen it. It applies really, really well to these small ships, effectively almost like an armor fly killer sort of ship. Along with these Vedmax, they're going to have so much ability to kill off this tackle. But the question is, can they do that, and can they get on top of that Rodiva and kill it off before the sheer power of the Hyperion and the Megathron Navy is unleashed upon them? Because it's going to apply to basically everything on this tournament team.
It seems to me like the Og Navy on the Rusty Hyenas team is going to have to do a little bit of the heavy lifting in terms of getting initial tackle, because the Pontifex and Punisher might have a hard time surviving.
Oh, here we go. There's the game start. We can see Alchemist 8 in the Heretic. He's going to go in and grab one of these battleships and pull them apart. If he can just hold one of them away from the rest of the fight, that's going to be incredibly important. We also see a web bubble there go out, which is going to slow both of their advances down a little bit. Looks like Scorched Celeste is the battleship they've chosen to let go through. Look at Crom 14 in the Punisher, though. He's going down into low armor here right away. It looks like the Rodiva reps won't even get a chance to go through on him.
Yeah, this is really showcasing the extremely good tracking of the Triglavian ships as they take him into low structure, but he seems to be slightly stabilizing as Alchemist and the Heretic is taking heavy DPS and struggling to survive.
Yeah, maybe some light piloting errors there. He's status web bubbled himself whilst he was primary, and that took down his transversal and let both of those battleships get perfect hits on him. Meanwhile, Crom 14, he's now perfectly repped up, and it looks like they're swapping over to Carl C in the Augur and Navy issue, trying to take things back. These Hyperions, these Galante battleships now, they're free to run into this back line. They've got to kite away and kind of use the edge of the arena to their advantage.
Yeah, what are the two Galante battleships going for at the moment? There is not a lot of damage going on to the tournament team right now. They're playing conservatively to try to not get caught.
Look at this though. The Vexor, the Vedmak, and the Harbinger Navy, they're both sitting on this MJD beacon in the side. They might be trying to MJD behind them and just kind of blunt this aggression from the Hyperions. And look, DPS finally landing on the Rodiva. I think this is just projected DPS. I'm not sure what from though.
Yeah, he is.
There they go. There's the MJD play. Those cruisers are now in the backlines, and they're going to be able to tackle down this Rodiva. They've basically snuck away from the advance of these Hyperions.
Yeah, the Vexor, Vedmak, and Harm Navy have gotten really close to that Rodiva and are going to put a lot of pressure on him now.
Oh, look at Destoyer, though. He's getting really low himself here. He's been caught out. He was the odd man, and he was the one that Org Navy chose to go in and grab. And he's not going to be long for this world, especially as those battleships start to get on top of him.
To survive as long as he can, overheating all the reps from Jonathan Reed and just try to occupy the enemy team while Milton Seeley and the Rodiva is probably going to die any moment now.
Yeah, you can see Crom 14, he is tackling down Yoyaz in the Vedmak. He's the fastest ship that tournament team has, and it doesn't look like the Vexor alone is going to be able to catch him. This might be a chance here for Rusty Hyenas to finish it off. That said, the Rodiva here, he's going into Hull. Oh, it's going to be so close.
Yeah, but he's keeping a good speed away from everything. He is certainly dying, although he was going 2,000 meters per second when he did so.
Yeah, Captain James Sparrow in the Vedmak, he was also caught along with Destoyer, and it looks like he's going to go down here as well. But that does leave the logistics advantage in the hands of tournament team. If they can drag this match out for longer and stop themselves from getting caught, they will win this match.
Yeah, I think I'd put my money on Rusty Hyenas having 2 battleships at the moment. They are bleeding slowly, but it's going to be hard for tournament team to actually muster enough DPS, especially to kill that Hyperion.
Oh my god, it looks like Jonathan Reed in the Onichon, he's been caught out by this Pontifex. Oh, that's devastating. That's going to allow Rusty Hyenas here to potentially close that logistics advantage if they can get on top of him. He's going to be a dual prop fit Onichon, so he will be able to keep some transversal up, but it's going to be a question of whether it's enough and whether he can buy enough time as he starts to take damage here. Yeah, Avery Lewis also taking DPS.
The tournament team managed to clear off one of the tackles and killing that Punisher, so the Pontifex is the second option now, and they're going to have to free their Oneros completely in order to grind out this match.
Oh, and that's going to be difficult. You can see those 2 battleships just menacingly walking up to it. It can't hit them from very far away, but it doesn't matter when they're sitting on top of your face.
Yeah, when the grapples are on at a short range, that speed decrease is just too much to deal with, as this Oneros is slowing almost completely to a halt now.
Yeah, and you can look at him, watch his armor just drop, 10% left. It's just going to take a couple more volleys now from these 2 ships to get him down, even with a cloud of rep drones around him.
Tai Lo in the Vedmak is also going incredibly low and is probably going to die given that he has no logistics, but Yoyaz in the Vedmak is also taking a decent amount of damage, and Avery Lewis is not going to solo 2 battleships on his own.
Yeah, Erlin 007 there coming in really clutch, managing to grab that one lucky scram on the Onichon and just turning this entire fight on its head and letting those battleships do their work. That said,
with blaster battleships, that they are easier to screen because they're not projecting far out. If you've got lasers, you can load good ammo and do a little bit of damage some of the time, but blasters are really all or nothing. But when they are on the all mode, they are really doing that high damage.
Oh, and Total Wang here in the Vexor, he was pushed up against the boundary by these 2 battleships. They've just caught him out. There's nowhere for him to run. Erlin 007 finally dying for his heroic plays earlier on in the game. I can't help but think that they should have focused him down a little earlier. But it's going to be so difficult, if not impossible, for tournament team to come back from this.
Total ownage exploded, and that means that they'll have to try to solo a battleship each if they want to get anything done, and the points are not in their favor either. This is going to be impossible.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult for Carl C. Agathon to really catch anything towards the end of this match. He is a relatively slow ship, being an Augur Navy issue, going against some slightly faster ships in the Vedmak and the Harbinger Navy. But it doesn't really matter. All Rusty Hyenas need to do now is not boundary, and they'll take this match home purely on the points.
I mean, we've seen that not boundarying can be a little bit difficult, but I've got confidence in Rusty Hyenas.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great execution there. And you saw just how well they were approaching with those battleships, kind of making sure they were coming in from two different angles, making sure that they had nowhere to run except into the boundary. And of course, if a ship ends up going past the boundary, it will be instantly destroyed. This isn't the same as those abyssal filaments, which you can play in right now if you fancy a taste of what 2v2 arena combat is like yourself on Tranquility. Rather than just taking steadily ramping up DPS, you are instantly deleted here.
I was getting worried in the first couple of seconds of this match when we saw the frigate go into low structure almost immediately, but the piloting of diving back out of the range of the guns, obviously, if you're flying a trig ship, you've got a hard lock on how far you can shoot. Anything out of your optimal is 0 damage. You're not even allowed to activate your guns, so they couldn't do the last pot shot.
Avery Lewis has slowed down to a crawl. I think he might have burnt out his prop mod here, and these battleships are right on top of him.
Yeah, once the grapples are on, Avery Lewis is dying.
Yeah, and with that, I think any hope of a tournament team comeback is completely out of reach here. With 2 minutes left on the match, it's just going to be a question of if they can successfully pin down this Vedmak and take home the 100 points victory.
Yeah, it's just going to be a scary feeling of flying that Vedmak. You see a large cloud of drones trying to catch up to you and steal your lunch money, and an angry Megathron Navy issue right behind them.
Yeah, I got to say, I thought Tournament Team had it with that MJD play, but they just weren't able to land the scram or the web on top of the Rediva, and it was able to kite them out for a solid couple of minutes there in the middle of the match. That alone was kind of what cost them here.
Yoyas is going straight for the MJD beacon. Let's see what he ends up doing with it.
He has activated it. He's going for the long jump record. Let's see how far he travels. 192 kilometers. What a jump.
That is the current record, is it not?
I think it might be the current record from this tournament, yeah.
Well, I've seen 83,000 kilometers before, and with that, we are going back to the studio.
We're back. Congratulations to your Rusty Hyenas team taking that victory there. Absolutely just a scary kind of slow meat grinder there of those two battleships coming out to start. We could see, tournament team trying to delay the inevitable with that fantastic bubble at the start there. But Wingnut, can you start us off there? Just, I know you love to see those Hyperions and Blasters in action. What else was going on in that match, Len?
Honestly, I just feel like tournament team kind of got a bit scattered. They were going, okay, we need to kill tackles so they can't kill us. So hence the Punisher got punished, honestly, and he immediately ran back to his Rediva. So by the way, well flown by that Punisher. But after that, they were like, we're going to commit to the Rediva. So they prepped the MJD, they were ready to go, and then they got tackled. It's like, okay, you're still going to go kill the Rediva, but there's a Mega Navy and a Hyperion right there. Are you going to deal with that? And they just, I guess it's kind of like, what can you really do? But they need a switch onto that, but it was kind of like, they were doomed the moment they were tackled. You know what I mean? It's a hard one to say.
It's
they just got caught and pulled apart.
Quite threatening in there. November, I'm not sure if you have thoughts, but for me, it kind of just seemed like these battleships were just driving a wedge into tournament team, and they were just almost too scared to engage at the start there.
Yeah, I mean, two battleships, particularly two blaster battleships like that, output a vast amount of damage. So you don't want to be too close. There was a lot of tackle floating around, so the battle cruisers could get caught. We saw right at the start when they attempted to finish off the Punisher really quickly, and it survived in just like very, very, very low structure, and then was able to pull it back. One thing I'll point out here is that was the same comp that was bought the previous day by Rusty Hyenas. So one of the things I think here is that like the Mega Navy has a utility high slot. Maybe they wanted that for the
Hyperion does too.
The Hyperion does 2, but I suspect again it has to do with the way that the points broke down as to why they've made that choice.
Well, I do believe that double Hyperion is cheaper than a Hyperion Mega Navy.
Yeah,
So,
for
but
sure.
Navy,
It's just,
the only advantage I really see is I believe the Mega Navy has a tracking bonus, but it's also much faster. So I'm not too sure.
200 ms faster, yeah. Which is
Uh,
not bad.
Maybe we can find out from their team once they get eliminated, get some insights into them. Or
yeah, I'm gonna track someone down and ask that question because I'm curious to know. I think again, when it comes to choosing what you're going to bring, 3 battle cruisers do output a lot of damage, but they're also relatively soft ships compared to battleships. So 2 battleships versus 3 battle cruisers, unless it's very, very, very well executed, is always going to pose a problem. They did have a chance when they managed to get in behind and tackle get close to the Rusty Hyenas Logi, but they never actually managed to kind of really lock it down and kill it quickly enough, so that was a problem as well.
Actually, almost yes. Pretty much on the same note, we had a similar match. Talking about matchups yesterday in the winners brackets of I only need 2 comms versus Esports Utopia. Only need 2 comms. Only brought 1 battleship with Drakovec. But the Hyperion Org Navies, and they went up against that no logic comp almost of Esports Utopia, but kind of also just showing there how the presence of a battleship can still be dominating even against such a good no logic comp that Esports is bringing with the Sci Fleet. So well done. I do also want to point out, although they have been knocked out, well done to tournament team, they still showcase some great piloting there, especially with that the lovely little Wolfpack MGD they did onto the enemy Rodiva, and also their excellent use of Webbles, I must say. Webbles normally being a bit of a contentious point, especially they do actually hit their own interdictor most of the time, exceptionally hard to outrun your own Webble. I think only a Saber with a heated prop can, but excellent use there. They're getting those 2 battleships at the start, but unfortunately still being eliminated from the tournament. Next up, we're going to be seeing Game 43. It's going to be Scarf Experts versus Kaiden Onichon. Scarf Experts have gone for the Armageddon, this is for the bans, the Armageddon ban, Ogre Navy issue, the Shack, and Kaiden Onichon banning the Zarm, Golem, Typhoon. Quite consistent bans from them, but Wingnut, I want to speak actually about the Ogre Navy issue ban. We rarely
Exactly what I
see
was thinking.
we rarely see cruiser DPS ban. Normally the cruiser slot is reserved for control. Why might we see an Ogre Navy issue suddenly pop up your own bans?
Because it's become the standout armor tackle ship, and honestly, I'm surprised it took this long. They are really good ships. If you wish to attach it to any armor comp you've got, if you're running like heavy battleship ones, you bring a single Org Navy. Essentially, it just slots in so well. So this could be a way of trying to ban out good armor comps. Those the other 2 ships they banned, Kaiden and Lashak, both good armor ships. They may be trying something like a battle cruiser kite setup. They may be trying other ideas. But yeah, it looks like they're very much directly attacking armor comps without touching the logic.
Well, November, we spoke about it yesterday when the Jorger being the most picked ship, and we were speaking a bit about how, banning the Jorger, sure, it enables a lot of comps, but it's not like the linchpin that keeps a comp together. So banning it, not always, there's some replacements, maybe a bit subpar, but the comp still works in general. We've seen Templates bring their 3 battle cruisers setup, that triple daddy setup with an Ogre Navy issue and an Omen Navy issue. Do you really feel an Ogre Navy issue is such a crippling loss actually to a comp?
It can be replaced in a pinch with a Mauler, but if you really need to lock something down and sit on top of it, then it's just an excellent, excellent choice. No one wants to spend their time shooting at an Org Navy. And so at the same time, whilst it's locking down a target, it can also apply a lot of damage. You can fit it with pulses or you can fit it with beams if you want more projection. So it will do a lot of damage to the target that it's sitting on. But again, if we look at like the bands kind of around it, Armageddon, Orga Navy, Lashak, it looks very heavily targeted to kind of removing a kind of really heavy armor control type comp.
So I also want to reference here. Yesterday we saw Kaiden Onichon now bringing that combination of the no logi comp we've seen before. That's with battle cruisers, battleship, and those sci fleet issues, especially with the Dramil in there as well. I'm personally hoping they're going to see that again. Yesterday, Scarf Experts was actually won against paid actors in a Widow matchup. They were relying on uh, their Oniras there in the sense they knocked out paid actors. They bring the Widow, Oniras, Vigilant, Ogre Navy issue, Droger, Pontifex, Blackbird. So relying on the ECM, whereas Kaiden Onichon has gone for that old in. Anything that you're hoping to see in this match, Wingnut, before we head over to the arena?
I was hoping to see sci fleet issues just because they're fun. I love it.
Well, I have disappointing news for you, but we will be heading to the arena now with our commentating duo of Murray and Radicos to watch Game 43, Scarf Experts versus Kaiden Onichon.
Welcome back to the arena for another match of the Anger Games. I'm Murray, and I'm here with Radicos. Radicos, we're looking at some Shield, some Gila. Give me a little bit more detail about what these teams are bringing.
All right. Well, on Team Red, we have the Scarf Experts in a Hurricane Fleet issue, Scimitar, Triple Gila, Bifrost, and Hyena. On the other side, we have Kenichi, the Kenichi guys, Kentrilis, and a double Drake Navies, Osprey, double Gila, and double Jackdaw.
I am really interested in the difference in Logi here. You've got the more standard Scimitar from Scarf, but Kaiden Onichon, they've chosen to go for the Osprey, getting those points into other parts of their comp, namely getting that extra battle cruiser and then getting some Jackdaws instead of the typical bottom end. I'm curious to see if that bites them, as the Osprey is much easier to run down with drones than the Scimitar is.
Yeah, and the match is starting here right now. We're going to see what they do. Let's, okay, here we go. Team Red, Scarf Experts are just rushing in right now.
Super aggressive play from Scarf Experts as Kaiden Onichon starts to kite back. You can see the Hyena is looking to dive in. It needs to be very careful. The last Hyena that tried this had a real bad time, but he's being careful. He's turning away and kind of making an angle to cut off the initial attempt by Kaiden Onichon to cut away to the side.
Yep, looks like these guys are just trying to work their way around, let the rest of their team catch up here. There's some DPS going onto the Bifrost character 001 of Scarf Experts.
Yeah,
He's
the
taking a lot of
Bifrost is
DPS.
kiting back super hard. The Drake Navy issue of Kent actually moved forward and kind of presented himself as an initial target, but Scarf Experts are largely ignoring him, looking to keep going further and find a target deeper in the back line.
Yeah, they're looking for the Logi, and they're looking possibly for the Gilas, because they know that's the DPS that needs to drop right now. Chad Hammercock is taking some DPS now, but the Simi is right on it. Chewy is a pretty good Simi pilot, so he's going to be right on him here. As long as Chad keeps his transversal up and his 10 MN going, he'll be good.
Yeah,
Looks like the Osprey. Yeah.
They managed to get onto the Osprey. He's getting some big chunks out of shield. Those ships are not tanky, and as he takes this massive damage, it looks like he's going to die pretty much instantly.
Oh, yeah. Gila drones will tear through this Osprey. Yep, he is down. Chad Hammercock is just bouncing, between half shield and full shield. I think he's going to be doing just fine. This is a huge play for the Scarf Experts as they primary Tagoyu in the Drake Navy, and it looks like they're also split DPS on the other side.
Yeah, they've got damage onto Seal and Nagila, but then they've switched pretty much all of it over to the Simi of back. He looks to have been basically run down by Kent in the DNI, and other ships are collapsing on him super hard now. He's in a pretty rough spot. He's heating his prop, trying to get away, but it's going to be very hard to get out of range before he runs out of XLASB charges.
Oh, but the Drake Navy,
as we say,
the Drake Navy.
It looks like it might be a trade. The Drake Navy is going to die for sure, but it's a question of whether these XLASB chargers can keep this Simi up, and they
goes
cannot.
Down in the Scimitar. Oh,
now
man.
it's a pure DPS race, but Scarf Experts do have the edge because they managed to get the enemy Logi down faster and get a DPS ship pretty quickly. So they've got an edge here, and it's going to be a straight Gila trade. You've got Ayaka going down on Kaiden Onichon, and CeeLo taking damage for Scarf.
Yeah, and that's the big advantage that you're saying is the Gilas. They still have triple Gilas. There's no logistics on the field, and it looks like the Kiters, the Kinshi Kiters are their Gila is going down pretty quick here. I can't even say his name. Ayaxa, I think it is. Did I say?
Yeah, the numbers don't lie, and the
Ayaka?
bigger DPS numbers killing a little bit faster here.
Well, it's
And
really nice
they-
with having the Hyena on the field too.
The Hyena helps for keeping those Gila drones on targets. They do have these Jackdaws, which is some more DPS compared to the bottom end of the Bifrost and the Hyena, but it doesn't seem to be doing enough to make up the difference as they get the initial Gila trade in Scarf's favor and start working on the second Gila of Nosuko.
Yeah, it's amazing. These guys are doing a great job just kiting around, keeping things, webbed down, being able to apply all this DPS. Silo is going to go down here in the Gila, but the trade has already been made. There's nothing that these other Mark Bridges is, or what are they called again? I can't even remember. I feel so bad.
Kiting Onichon.
Kiting
Get your weeb on,
Onichon.
baby. Come
Man,
on.
oh, I know, right? I should know that by now. Kiting Onichon.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Nosuko is going to drop here as Gohin in the Gila starts taking damage for Scarf. But at this point,
did you just
it is
see that
looking-
volley from the HFI? He was in low shield and he's like, whoop! Oh, man.
Arties do be like that sometimes. But with
Yeah,
that ship
boy.
down, there really is just a Drake Navy in terms of big DPS. They're going to go on the Jackdaws and clean them up a little, or clean them up quickly as they work through this, but it is looking more and more guaranteed in favor of Scarf Experts.
Oh, man, this match was, in the beginning there, you weren't sure what was happening when that simi went down real quick like that. Trade just for a DNI, I wasn't sure what was going to happen there. There was the Gila trade was still, up there for Scarf, but it could have ended, that could have been no good.
Yeah, and they will manage to get Gohan down, and at the very least make it look as close on the scoreboard as it was in the actual match. But Kent is now in about 30% shields and dropping steadily. Unfortunately, a Drake Navy can't really outrun what's left on grid for Scarf, so he has no choice but to pretty much sit there and take it, especially as the Hyena is keeping him in place.
Yeah, I mean, as we called it before, when the Chad Hammercock has you his grasp on you, you aren't going anywhere. You are going to be beaten down and held where you are, so the rest of the team can assert all of their DPS upon you.
Yeah, it really just does highlight the importance as a small pilot in something like a Hyena of just staying alive, and even if it means you aren't doing as much as you technically could early on in the match, the added value you get out of staying alive and being useful later in the match is just so massive. And so that careful piloting is just so important as a small ship pilot.
Yeah, I mean, it adds a lot of versatility, for the team that still has it. The Jackdaw there
Alright.
goes down.
One Jackdaw left.
One more left. One lone kiter.
And he appears to have pretty much given up. He is sitting at not many meters a second. He knows it's over. And the Bifrost is coming to give him a nice hug as the DPS comes over to finish cleaning up this grid.
This is a warrior's an honorable way to die in the arena, and I commend him for doing this.
Yeah, well, a pretty solid match in the Gila Kiting Mirror, with Scarf Experts coming away with it. And as Nick's Witro goes down in the Jackdaw, we'll hand it back to the desk for a breakdown.
Welcome back, everyone, and congratulations to Scarf Experts on that victory, knocking Kaiden Onichon out of the tournament. I'm joined here now by Mazir and Jintan. Mazir, we were actually speaking before this match started about the bans of Scarf Experts banning that old Navy issue. Both teams actually leaving the Gila open, which we didn't touch on, but hindsight, it showed that Scarf Experts almost seemed to be more comfortable with that Gila setup. And do you think they maybe were just worried about the old Navy bringing the Gilas, or did it just coincidentally happen there? You're muted, Mazir.
I guess I can join that club as well, but to answer your question, like you talked about before, the Orc Navy is a strong ship, but it's not really that linchpin of a setup. You can even bring again Navy Omen instead, or even like a Stepper Fleet issue, or some other Navy cruisers. So it's not really. I don't really see it's that effective use of a ban, unless you really want to bait people into something. In this case, like make both teams bring healers and then just outperforming in a healer matchup.
My headset has died here, so I'm kind of out of listening to what my co-commentators are saying, but my microphone like used to work. So I'm just going to throw it over to Jinten for his thoughts along while I sort myself out.
Yeah, I think we saw some really interesting decisions, especially on like the second or third turn from both teams. What happened after they decided they couldn't break anything whilst the logistics were up, and then moved from that to try and kill the rest of the ships in the comp, going from the logistics and then from there. We didn't really see the Jackdaws break away and make their own independent decisions. I think that's something that they could have done to really change the flow of that match. If they'd have been able to take the Hyena or the Bifrost out earlier on in the match. In fact, I don't think they actually did until I think those ships survived the entire game. If they'd have been able to go out there and use their sharpshooter mode to really apply DPS onto those critical support ships, whilst being able to keep range from them, that would have helped their heavy DPS to survive immensely. And that probably could have turned it, because healers, when you don't have logistics up, they aren't quite as tanky as you expect. They're only about 60, 70k EHP. And that means that you can just burst them down with the 150k EHP bricks that the Drake Navies and things like that represent.
But now, definitely a strong combination we've seen there from the Bifrost and the Hyena. Obviously, the Bifrost bringing in the strong links. The Drake Navy and the HFI being able to fit the links, but not bonus towards them, while the Bifrost has the bonus. But now, you're speaking about the Jackdaws applying. The Scimitar obviously was alive there at the start. Being able to, take to logistics cruiser, apply lovely long-range reps, allowing the Hyena Bifrost to still kite. Do you think the Jackals would still have been able to actually secure that kill at the beginning just by themselves, or would it have required a full commitment, split tactics? Was it actually viable with that Simi still living there, Jintan?
Well, no, we actually saw them apply DPS to it during the start of the match. It looked like kiting Onichan were going for a similar headshot to what we saw be applied to Turbo Feed or Glory in yesterday's matches, where they just try and get the drones out to you, use those drone nav computers, and just overheat your belief in getting one or two wrecking shots to kill it before the Scimitar can lock. But unfortunately, they weren't lucky enough to do that. We saw Chad Hammercock expertly piloting around the arena and not even hitting Hull in the way Azure did in their own matches earlier on in the day.
I think another problem was that they had damage on the Bifrost as well. So they had a bit of split damage first on the Bifrost and then on the Hyena. So they didn't really have enough burst to really deal with the Hyena. And then the issue with the Hyena is that it's a really fast ship, and they get a bonus to signature radius, and it had Bifrost links. So that it makes it really hard to apply even with light missiles. And I think that's one of the things that makes the Hyena so survivable in this situations, and one of the weaknesses of the Kaiden Onichon comp. It didn't really have any ways to slow down these fast frigates, so they could really apply well to them.
We definitely also saw, speaking about that survivability yesterday, we saw Hyenas surviving in 1% structure for quite a while in the match. I'm trying to recall which match that was again, but we pretty much saw him surviving thanks to, I think, some rep bots from a Claymore, if I remember correctly. But speaking to that survivability of it, but Mazera, I also like to hear your thoughts now. We've seen a couple of Gila matches. We also saw one-sided Gila match, some fantastic MJD plays to put the Gila in its place. What do you feel at this point is making or breaking these Gila comps? What is allowing teams to dominate one over the other when we see this matchup happen on the grid?
I mean, it's very much a support wing, a matter of support wing, and also target calling. You need to get rid of a key ship quickly, and so as a captain, you need to know what your win condition is, and the Rusty, I believe it was Rusty Hyenas or who was that was fighting against Kaiden Onichon. At least the winning team, they knew that they could easily get rid of that Osprey because they had the projection and they had the Hyena. So they made this really quick play that allowed them to get the advantage at the beginning of the match. Even though they lost the scimitar, they were still like ahead because they could kill the Osprey quickly and then start working on the DNI. So they ended up trading the DNI for their own semi. But at that point, they are just so far ahead on the DPS while still having the control of the Hyena.
Some lovely insights there. So the next match we're also going to be seeing game 44. It's going to be Javka Mind Division versus Volt A. So if we just take a look at the matches we saw before of these teams. So yesterday, match 39, we saw Volt A were taking the victory against Ramrod Reloaded. Volt A bringing in the Leshak Guardian, Rook, Draugr, Pontifex Vengeance. So the classic kind of the Shack followed by the ECM Guardian combination. Ramrod trying their shot here at that triple daddy setup we've seen before. Gentan, do you kind of we've seen Tempest play this setup successfully with the triple battle cruisers, Org Navy, although they double Org Navy here. Tempest normally going for the Org Navy Omen Navy issue, and a Heretic. Ramrod going for the Malediction instead of double Org. Do you have any ideas why that the triple battle cruiser comp ended up losing against Volta A? What gave Volta A the victory here of the Shack?
The sheer matter of the fact was that whilst you do have a lot of projection with the triple daddy comp, Ramrod actually just kited backwards. They weren't willing to go in there and kind of impose their will on the ECM and try and take out that Rook really early on in the game because they were so fearful of that Leshak DPS. And that's sort of what makes this armor control comp work. So you can't really go in on a Leshak because if it starts getting its new pressure and spooling up on one of your DPS ships, you are going to break eventually, even under T2 logistics rep power. Whereas, it's just a difficult comp to fly against. You need to be able to maneuver around the Leshak while still taking most of the center of the arena so that Rook can't just sit at 120, 130 kilometers away from you and just split up your DPS and allow the rest of their tackle to come in and pick you apart, which is what happened to Ramrod.
I can see we could also kind of reflect that almost control zone with Templates that always been in Armageddon in those matchups, kind of testifying to that, the Newt's been pretty scary for that setup. Templates probably being confident in their kiting potential to outrun something like that, but definitely, like you say, Leshak just influencing this sphere of deadliness around it, which we saw earlier before when we saw this double Galenti battleships just wedging themselves between a team, making them scatter, run before the sheer might that these battleships can put out. Now, we also saw yesterday Mazir, Javka Mining Division versus Noir. Javka knocking Noir out of the tournament, but that was the setup which we saw actually almost a double fly kitter, pretty much a mirror there, with the difference coming down, I'd say, to the double Jackdaw versus, Caracal Hyena. Noir actually taking the Hyena on their side, but being on the losing side. Any thoughts on what actually gave Javko the edge in that match? Was the Hyena even that important, and Javko just, not required for that setup?
I mean, the difference between Fly Killer setup and the setups we just saw is that for the Fly Killer, you don't need these long range webifiers to apply. Like if you have pilots in those Sleipnirs that can transversal match properly, you can just blob stuff without having to web it down, without having to have bonus paints on it. So by not bringing the Hyena, you instead get something else. And even if it's just a Jackdaw, it's 2 points less, so you can spend these points on something else. And you can get some extra DPS. And in that case, the Jackdaw is the advantage, which is actually quite interesting compared to this match we just had that where it was the Hyena that's actually being worth more than the Jackdaws. So again, it's a really good case of knowing the synergy between the setups and the ships you bring, especially when it comes to support wing. So knowing which ships really excel, and if you have Fly Killer setup, you don't need these long range webifiers. You can either bring more DPS Jackdaws, or you can bring some other control. In that case, would be a case where Kitsune could do well just to mess a bit with either tackle or with the Logi to make it even harder for the opposing team to rush in on your Fly Killer setup. It's something we've done in the past in Camel, and it can work really well.
Well, you speaking about there, pretty much going more on for the control. I mean, the damage, sacrificing a bit of that control, just applying the missiles, not really caring about those long range webs. Definitely gave Javka the edge in that mirror match. But Jintan, I want to ask you, when people are making these comps, especially with limited slots of only 7 pilots, what sacrifices are you normally willing to make or able to make, and what things do you actually just straight up need in a comp to win?
Yeah, the interesting thing about this 7-man setup is that you have to sacrifice at least one of the three pillars that are generally considered normal in an AT setup. You need to be able to do over 3,000 DPS. You need to have some form of defensive boosts, and you need to have T2 logistics. Those are the 3 things that you normally consider to be the default starting point of any composition. And in the Anger games, it's very, very difficult to achieve all 3 of those. So you see people experimenting with using the Rediva, a T1 logistics that can, under certain circumstances, rep as much as T2. You see people using a lot more control with the hopes that that will mean that they can do less than 3,000 DPS and still break through a T2 logistics, and all sorts of other things along those lines. Generally, what you end up sacrificing is either slots to DPS instead of tackle, and we see that a lot with the 2 battleship comps, or we see people sacrificing DPS, as we've seen with a lot of these armor control comps, like what Volta has brought previously, where they basically only have a Lashak in terms of heavy DPS, and everything else is just there to support the Lashak and get it onto the target.
That's actually well put there as well. Team is also just having to know what their comp can do, cannot do, and applying it in the right way. I do see here Javka for the next match. Mazir has banned the Barghast. It is one of our most banned ships. If I take that's the open ban analysis. Excuse me. Actually, being our most banned battleship, banned 35 times, followed by the Scorpion. But I'm not going to speak why the Barghast is banned. I just want to speak about the weapons choice. Do you think a Tor Barghast has a place in the tournament, or is everyone just going to be sticking to the rapid heavies if it fields?
I mean, in the tournament format, if you bring a top Barghast, you're sort of not making use of any of the really strong sides of the ship. The Barghast is one of the strongest kiting battleships, and the long range scram is really good for kiting and being defensive.
If you go fast, you can get into torp range faster, right?
I mean, and you can also run into your enemy's guns faster.
Yeah, I mean, once you got into range, then what? Okay, if you're going to brawl something, then if you're going to brawl something that's much tankier than you, then you're going to lose. Just going to go in and die faster. So that's really a case you're not making good use of the ship. Okay, if you want to brawl with a torpedo battleship, then consider Scorpion Navy issue.
Well, speaking about brawl action in Mazir, I think we're gonna have some exciting stuff here for the audience to watch, as we're gonna be watching Game 44 now. It's gonna be Javka Mining Division versus Volta, and we'll be heading to the arena now for, I hope, quite an exciting match here with Murray and Radicos.
And welcome back to 2TAC4 on Thunderdome. We have another match here between Volta and Noir. Is it Noir? Javka Mining, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And we have looks like a pretty interesting match with some ECM here. And what do you think?
So we've got a more standard composition out of Volta. They've got this Widow Blackbird, this combination of ECM with some armor damage behind it, Guardian to back it up, something we've seen before. On the other side, we've got a new look. Javka Mining Division have brought 2 armor command ships, and then on their low end, they've brought 2 Hecates. So they've got a comp that has a lot of DPS, and they can look to kind of play it in a mid-range style, but they're using a lot of ships we haven't seen before, backing it up with a couple more standard things in the Rediva, Og, Omen, but it's a very interesting look. Oh, the match is going to start in 5 seconds, and I do want to say these Hecates are actually rail fit. So these guys are going to be looking to play at mid-range. Javka is actually kiting back a bit at the start of the match, and they're kind of hovering, looking for a long-range target. They're trying to snipe out the Draugr of Sticky, who's taking a ton of damage very quickly.
Oh man, yeah. If Stiggy Makaka doesn't catch here, and it looks like he does. They have switched over to the Jason Orzoran in the vet back here.
Yeah,
And
Sticky did a very good job kiting out of range of these guns, which, while they do project well, don't project across the entire arena. And now you can see Volta starting to move in. The Vigilant and the Vedmak are looking to go pick up targets and start attacking the other side of the arena.
Yeah, I mean that's what they need to get back there and lock. Looks like what are they trying to lock down here? Looks like the Starte of Pulse.
If they're diving in, looking for actually this Absolution first is getting
They're on the
picked
Absol. Yep.
the Vigilant. Meanwhile, the Astarte is getting picked up by the Vedmak. They're looking to kind of hold down this team that, in theory, can kite so that they can try and get their DPS on top of them and start grinding them out using their jams.
Yeah, and with those jams, I mean, they're not going to be able to either, like you said, they're going to get picked apart. They can only shoot certain things, which basically is the Widow and the Blackbird. And the Blackbird is just comfortably out at range, away from the whole Jovco team, just making sure that everyone's doing well. Jason is getting reps from the Guardian Outlawed Porno with no issues at all. Looks like Pulse on the other side of the Astarte is at half armor. So I mean, once this Astarte goes down, that's Lynx and DPS off the field, and that's not going to be good to try and break a team with. That's just more jams that can be spread across once he goes down.
Yeah, there's two big things here, right? One is that Volta are spreading their jams very well. You look at that bar, they've got at least one jam on every single ship on the enemy team. They're spreading them out super well. They're working on this Astarte slowly as he's just not getting enough reps, not getting any reps really from this Rodiva. Meanwhile, on the other side, Joko, they're doing that classic, we're jammed by a lot of things. You can see DPS trickling onto the Widow, trickling onto the Blackbird, as Ice Sovereign in the Hecate gets caught and takes a huge chunk of armor damage.
Oof. Yep, he is down. He's not living through that DPS.
Those rail Hecates are apparently quite light in terms of the tank. You can see the ships on Jovco. They're trying to start to move towards the other side. They're trying to get on top of the Widow, trying to get on top of the Blackbird, trying to get on top of the Guardian to make something happen. But they're really struggling to do so, and the other Hecate's about to pay the price as well.
Well, yeah, the Pontifex and Zebediah has the Augur Navy issue of Joko first recon screen, so he's not going to be doing anything. And then the Blackbird is being tackled down now, which is what needs to happen. But I mean, when you have that DPS there, he's running him off right now. So I mean, I don't see a Jovco bouncing back from this. There's so many jams and so many ways for Volta to be able to spread their tackle around the field, just like they did yesterday against my team, and just going to town and slowly chunking down that Astarte. Eventually, they'll get jams on that Rodiva, and he will bite the dust pretty quickly here.
Yeah, especially with those Hecates. They were such a huge portion of the DPS despite having such a light tank. And with them down, it's really hard to see whether a way in which they can break through these opposing targets. And to be fair, the Hecates weren't necessarily the worst call, right? In a sharpshooter mode, a tactical destroyer is actually very difficult to jam comparative to its size. But unfortunately, with enough jams on the rest of the ships or with some lucky jams on those Hecates, they simply just weren't able to get enough DPS to break things. They are actually, I say that, the Widow is dropping into about 30% armor, but it's just been so slow for it to tick down. Meanwhile, it looks like the Rodiva did manage to get unjammed, and he is getting in some rep cycles on the Astarte.
Yeah, but he's chunking pretty hard here still, Pulses. He's about to hit a hole because General in the Rodiva is getting pressure, and this is what happens when you're Triglogy, is you get circuits of pressure and you have to run and you're not paying attention to your range. Spool might break and Pulse goes down. That is huge loss for Jovco.
Yeah, the Rodiva is dropping as well.
That's that's happening, and the Widow will be able to stabilize no problem.
With the Rodiva going down, there really isn't going to be much left for Jovco to do. They don't have the damage, they don't have the tank, and so this Guardian is not going to have any issues keeping this Widow alive. And even though they're trying to put a little bit of pressure on him, poke at that Blackbird who's taking some jams to keep DPS off the Widow, there's really not going to be anything they can do as they start to slowly get chunked down by the DPS of Volta.
Yeah, I mean, this is classic setup when you're using this control comp like this with ECM is, keeping the two ECM ships up because they're the ones that will be being shot, and letting your other ships go around and screen, tackle things down, and be able to kill them and separate everything. Because in the last match, something like this, if they went against Mega Navy and Hyperion, that was like 2 matches ago. It would be interesting to see how they would split it up, and if they'd be able to keep up the things that they need to. Those kind of matches are a lot of fun to watch. Just like so many different in and outs between it is interesting to see, the intangibles that is.
Yeah, and I will say, although it didn't work out, I did like the attempt by Joko Mining to take a different look on grid, especially when you're facing a team like Volta, who are going to have very good pilots, are going to be able to mechanically execute on the things that they've practiced. Oftentimes, in these kind of best of one situations, your best chance at taking a win is bringing something that Volta might not have prepared against, where they don't know what ships they should be shooting first, or they're not sure how certain ships are fit. And so it's a better likelihood that you can force a mistake out of Volta and gain an advantage that you can turn into a win. And you could see it early on when they tried to use that projected DPS to try and pop the Draugr and get themselves an early advantage. Unfortunately for Joko, it didn't work out in the end. These kinds of plays are often kind of a low percentage chance when it comes to that, but it's good to see them trying that different thing, trying to use a surprise to gain a win, as opposed to just using something standard and kind of dying slowly.
Yeah, it's just too bad. These guys didn't get any ships down on their end. But we're gonna send them off here, and hopefully they. I don't know if they're gonna be interested in doing the show matches, but those seem kind of fun.
Yeah, the Absolution of Blue Dagger will be the last ship to go down here in about 30% armor as Volta finishes cleaning up this grid. And with the explosion of that Absolution, Volt A will take a clean sweep victory over Joko Mining, who are knocked out of the tournament. And we will look to send it back to the studio.
And welcome back, everyone. The match wasn't that long, but Volta's control bar was. We're here now with Mazir and Jintan again, and I think, Mazir, you probably have some things to say about what was happening there on the opposite side here of Javka.
I mean, like, this is a case like good use of the ECM. We're seeing that when they went for when the Javka team went for the all-in for the Blackbird, like he just swapped off his jams, and then the Widow jammed the targets on the Blackbird, and that forces them to go back to the Widow again. And so these two HCM chips are juggling the targets back and forth, making it really difficult for them to pressure anything. And then with the Volta team trying their best to like screen off everything and make sure it can't really move that much, they really had the control of this match throughout the entire match. Like they were sitting in the commanding position, just fooling around with these people like a puppeteer, and and that was like a case of a well executed control setup by the Volta team.
Well, Jintan, I think this is the first time we saw Hecades. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. If you have thoughts on what actually, were these ships quite effective here, or was it just a bit of a wasted effort, maybe?
Hecates are a very cool ship, and they do work well under certain circumstances, but they definitely don't work well if you wait for your friendly Rediva to be spooled up on something else that needs to stay alive, and then you rush into the back line and get caught by the entirety of Volta's tackle wing, which is sitting there waiting for you. I think what happened there was that some of the tackle pilots on the Jovko side, they just got baited basically by that Blackbird. They saw he was a little bit out of position. They thought they could make the run for him, and it had them jammed, so there was nothing else they could shoot. They ran in there, and then suddenly I've got a Draugr in my face. Suddenly I'm at half armor, and now I'm dead. That is, it was a really classic overextension, and Volta played really well to just wait for their opponents to make a mistake and then just immediately turning and capitalizing on it.
If you took a look at the positioning, the Volta, Pontifex, and the Draugr was just sitting behind, there being the defensive screening and the links for these ECM ships. And then when we saw the Hecate moving in, you just see these two destroyers burning in and tackle the Hecate, and then just a matter of time before he got killed off out of range of his Logi. So they were waiting for something like this to happen, and then they capitalized on it right away.
Definitely quite well executed, I'd say, on the ECM, especially that deathly combination of just being able to effectively juggle between. So kudos, excuse me. Well done to their skillful team play in that communication. Unfortunately, we're not able to see that, but I can only assume some good callouts on what's jammed and what's not. For those wondering why the teams, Volta arrived in the arena with a bit of shield damage there. Judging from local, we can only assume that the Widow pilot had a bit of fun with his smart bomb before arriving there. So some AWACS claims there in local. But before we're going to be heading to a break soon here, Gen 10, we're going to be now seeing those teams that were knocked down from the upper bracket yesterday now into the losers bracket here. With 4 matches coming up here to close off the day, is there anything you're looking forward to? Maybe any predictions? What teams will be surviving here?
I think the matches that I'm most looking forward to are Spectre Fleet versus Paper Numbers and Volt B versus Rusty Hyenas, because we're going to be watching 2 teams that have already played today. You know, they've had to deal with all of the prep for one of their first matches that we saw right at the start of the day, and now they're going to have to come back and do the exact same thing. They almost upset both of their matches as well. So, those are going to be some absolutely cracking things. We're going to get to see some really interesting theory crafting brought out, I think, here.
I'm almost looking forward to all these matches to say, but like I said before, I'm really wanted to see what's going to be happening with the Volt B match versus Rusty Hyenas, and there's also Grizzly mid-tier with Scarf Experts. Scarf Experts having some fantastic plays here, showing a more dominant setup there of the Gilas before versus Onichon. Mazeria, is there something you're particularly looking forward to, who you might think is going to come out on top here in the losers bracket?
I mean, with the Volt B team being knocked down into the lower bracket yesterday, it's always interesting to see these top tier teams being in the lower bracket, because that means they have to start bringing their best out. So you're going to see the good cards they're having on their hand. But aside from that, aggressively mid-tier versus Scarf Experts could also be a good match. Both teams have been showing good performance. So there's some good matches waiting for us after the break. I believe that.
Right. Before we head off, I want to play a bit of another round of guessing games with my co-commentators here to see how well they can guess. So based off the stats right now, this is including the feeders, so I doubt you're actually going to get this Gen 10. But what do you think is... I'll give you 3 guesses for the least survivable battleship.
Least survivable battleship. Is there any limits on the amount of them fielded?
No. So even if it's been fielded once, it counts.
Tempest Fleet issue?
Nope.
Armageddon?
Nope. One more guess, Gen 10.
Apocalypse?
Apocalypse Navy issue. Quite a good guess there in a sense. Actually followed by the Dominics, and I can't see what else here right now, but I think there's more coming through from the feeders right now. We'll see the Megathron being almost, not surviving the matches at all here right now. So these low tier battleship picks, kind of a bit niche. People preferring to have the Abaddons, the Geddons, even the Mega Navy issues doing quite well here. But hopefully the teams we're going to be seeing a bit more shake up from the comps after the breaks right now. ECM not always, I know, that exciting for the audience, unfortunately, but does show quite a high technical play level from the teams. So the next match we'll be seeing after the break is going to be aggressively mid-tier versus Scarf Experts. One of the matches I am definitely looking forward to. Hopefully they can showcase some more high action, high energy explosions for us. But that match will be kicking off at about 10 past. We'll be here before that match kicks off to go over a bit of a recap of what's been happening throughout the day and what will be coming up as well, to give you a bit of analysis and some insights into what else will be happening there. But we're definitely going to be taking a break now, and we'll be seeing you for that match then.
I'm gonna do this one time, okay? They're only doing 1000 DPS from the... You're winning this game. Provided this stays alive. If this guy doesn't stay alive, then suddenly you lose that race. But it's not a lemon, I'm just like him.
It's an 800 DPS lemon.
It's not...
Is that the one you were shooting friendlies, or...?
No, that's not the one I was shooting friendlies.
The one who was shooting friendlies is the game we won.
Should I save this? I think I should just save it.
Yeah, I think you should save it. Entitled Lemon.
I think we're gonna save it.
Lemon Theory.
And welcome back, everyone, after that short break. We're here on the second weekend, the second day of Angry Games 5, watching these teams duke it out in the losers brackets right now to see who can actually stay in this arena to secure their placement, because at the end of the day, we're only going to be having 8 teams left, and those 8 teams are going to be the only teams which will be there for that secure their portion of the Plex prize. The total prize pool currently is at 95,000 Plex, with first place getting a good chunk of that, 34%, about 32,000 Plex. I'm joined here now by Azir and Murray. Azir, before we get up into the upcoming games, any comments before on the previous games you see? Anything you want to kind of touch on that you've seen before that's happened thus far?
Well, I mean, certainly, Paper Numbers had that fantastic Balgorn play. It's definitely the play of the tournament so far. MJDing into the back line, immediately neuting out a hostile Logi. It was magnificent. It's the play that basically anyone who's flying in a tournament dreams of being able to make. So that was the thing that impressed me so far the most of all those first 4 fights today.
Definitely so, and having the successful MGDs multiple times. Obviously, that first one is the one that counted, but showing the continued and proper execution of it, that it wasn't just a fluke, showing that he's practiced this quite well. Murray, is there anything that was kind of a highlight to you thus far, something you want to touch on as well?
I think the biggest thing for me has been looking at some of the matchups where they are mostly a mirror, but they're taking slight differences. So something like the Gila on Gila fights that we've seen, where you can see really when like individual ships make a difference. It's really fun to see when those slight differences give one team an edge, just because everything else is by and by the same.
Well, speaking about getting edge, the match we saw before we hit the break was Volta versus Javka. Volta bringing that massive control comp there. Is there anything that these teams can actually do when they see this combination of, let's say, a Widow and a Blackbird? You know, what can teams actually do if they haven't brought ECM? Or do you just need to go in this ECM mirror and hope you just have RNG on your side? Like, what can these teams do to break through that control?
Well, I mean, obviously the first thing you can do is just ban it, which certainly is effective. You can just ban Widow and then you don't have to worry about it. But once it's on field, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can do a lot in your prep, though. You can, make sure that your comps have the sensor boosters, so that jamming is less likely. Really, what you have to do, though, then is you got to kill that Blackbird, because the Blackbird's the softer target, and you have to hope that they mess up their jam cycling, because as it happened in that match, the Blackbird was getting killed, and then the Widow jammed the things killing it, so now it was able to live. I personally have never been able to find a good solution when you're up against a good ECM play. So frankly, I don't know what you could do, but you just have to hope you get a little bit lucky with random number and try and kill the DP or the jams when you can.
So I do want to step in. We actually have seen one very good counter comp that was brought. I don't remember by who, but the core of it was a double Hyperion on the top end. And the reason the Hyperion works so well into those ECM comps is because the ECM comp itself is very low damage. In order to take out ships, it's relying on jams on the Logi. But because Hyperions have that self-rep, it takes so long to kill them that the Hyperions can much more easily go out, get a target, start working down on the enemy team, burning them down, and buying a lot of time for their team, because even if the match extends out, both sides lose Logi, a couple of ships go down. As long as those Hyperions are still alive, the enemy team was so low damage to start with that the Hyperions can win the match pretty much by themselves.
We have exactly seen just that with Hyperions, just not a single Hyperion dying yet. Also, the combination we saw earlier with the Mega Navy and the Hyperion being a deadly combination by Rusty Hyenas. So, like you say, the Hyperion being quite a brick, still being able to apply the threat to being a lost ship on the grid, able to sustain itself. Unlike the Abaddon that we see, where the Abaddon can do a lot of DPS, but it doesn't have the utility high and doesn't have the self-sustain, so it does still rely on its team a lot of the time to make that end game happen here. But we're going to be touching now upon the match that's going to be coming up. Excuse me. We're going to be seeing game 49. It's going to be aggressively mid-tier now, being knocked down from the winners bracket yesterday by Tempest Kelsef. They're going to be up against Scarf Experts, which have managed to secure their way thus far, see if they can stay in it. aggressively mid-tier have gone for the semi-Widow ban, so like you said before, banning the Widow, one way to deal with it, and also banning the Hyena. Scarf Experts have banned the Armageddon, Barghest, and on Neros. Azir, now I think this might be one of the few times we've seen Hyena ban. Is this a targeted ban, you might say, against Scarf Experts themselves, or just a general strategy that the aggressively mid-tier might be not keen to face?
It's, I would guess that's probably a targeted ban. Haven't done as much opposition research as aggressive mid-tier will have at this point, but hyenas are a very critical ship for a lot of comps, and so if you know that they field a comp that uses a hyena and you don't want to face it, it's a way to either weaken that comp, so if they do bring it, it's now inferior, or it's a way to just sort of say, you know what, webs are a problem for what we want to bring, and you like them, so we're just going to get rid of them. And certainly there are other web ships that are available, like the Loki, for example, but at a points cost that's much, much higher than the Hyena. Hyena's only 6 points, so you can field it fairly easily without compromising the rest of your comp.
And now we've seen Scarf Experts obviously play today. They've had quite dominating victories over their opponents. But now, Murray, speaking about yesterday's game when we saw Templars versus aggressively mid-tier, we also saw a kind of almost pseudo mirror here. Both of them bringing some combination, well, not actually a triple daddy. We saw Templars bring the 3 battle cruiser setup, where aggressively mid-tier opted for only 2 battle cruisers and a Vigilant mixed in with a Droger. Do you feel that the 2 battle cruisers can actually survive in this? We've had some comment about 3 battle cruisers, but the sacrifices you're making for only 2 battle cruisers, what does that actually offer them?
So that was actually, I mean, having talked to some people in the back as well, right? That rush, the comp that Rote brought there, mid-tier brought, that was a rush comp. Those ships were fitted with blasters. And so it was a very different theoretical approach, even if some of the ships were the same hull type. I expect that we probably won't see that look out of them again. I think they were looking to really try and specifically counter something that they had expected Tempest to bring. And I think, especially after losing with that rush comp, I think they're not going to look at that again. Now, we've seen Kaiden comps with like 2 battle cruiser, triple cruiser DPS, or things like that. And I think there's still definitely plenty of ways in which that style of comp can work. But with rush comps in the 7-man format, you need to be very, very careful about what and how you're bringing. And unfortunately, that double BC blaster rush wasn't it.
It's definitely it. Unfortunately, I think it worked out for them. I think we even saw in that match before, I think they got a bit of split tackle happen against them, so they got their DPS split up against Tempest. Hopefully, they can have either a bit more spatial awareness, or maybe just better application or screening to if they go for something that's all in like that, to just be able to get the damage where it needs to be. So, is there I think we've seen very limited straight up brawling comps, brawling being more on the battleship side when those have been present. Do you think brawling is a viable strategy when battleships aren't present, or do we see these battle cruiser hulls more always stick to the long range style?
I mean, certainly we're seeing a lot more kiting happening. But you certainly can brawl with them. And I think it was last AT and the Anger Games before this, we saw a lot of ham rush setups using Nighthawks and either Tengus or Lokis, sometimes even Claymores instead of the Nighthawks. But it's certainly something that you can do. And my team personally practiced with some ham rush variations, and they do work. But kiting is just in general more attractive because it lets you control the engagement, and the danger with a rush, particularly with things that aren't battleships, is that when you're going in and brawling, if one ship gets webbed away, it now can't apply its damage. And if you're range limited, that's a huge, huge problem. Battleships tend to not face that nearly as much.
Mm-hmm. And then now, while we're speaking about this whole battleships and battle cruisers, we got a nice little hybrid here, Murray. Being that our 16th most picked ship, the Oracle, coming in at 11, what is an Oracle offering to these teams, and does it have a place as we've seen it right now? I think we did maybe have 1 or 2 successful matches with it, but what is it offering to these teams then?
The Oracle is a very tricky ship to make work. It does a lot of damage and it has good projection, but it can get messed up by tracking, and it has very low EHP pool. So you need to very carefully design your comp around protecting those oracles in some way, be it with webs screening off the enemy team, or having screening tackle, or having a bunch of jams that are backing these ships up. You need to have a very clear and tight composition built around those oracles in order to make them work. It's a ship that, unlike something like the Og Navy issue, right? The Og Navy, you can kind of just throw in a lot of different comps and it'll do its job. The Oracle, much less so.
And now I want to speak about one of these bands we've been seeing. Is there? I think it's currently here at our 14th most banned ship. It's a bit of a standout for me. The Loki at 11 bands total. Obviously we've got the Gila coming in at 71 bands, contesting with the Bargas Scorpion around the 35 zone. A lot of other ships we've seen are control ships, but the Loki obviously being one of the Tech 3 cruisers, one of the only ones we're seeing in bans. Why are teams possibly scared of this? What is the Loki bringing to the teams, and does it still probably have a place in this format right now?
Well, I mean, the first thing it's doing is it's obviously bonused for those longer webs, and there isn't a comp that you can come up with that doesn't benefit from webbing the opponent. So having long webs is always useful. It also, say in a ham rush situation, it brings a lot of damage. And you can also fit it with HMLs and still get pretty good damage out of it. And it's a Tech 3 cruiser with huge tank. And so it checks all of those boxes of really useful things to have in your comp. Talking about that Hyena ban earlier, you want to get rid of those long webs with Hyena ban. Well, if you bring a Loki that has those webs, you're not going to be able to kill it. It's going to take a lot of focused effort to actually kill those webs off the field. So that's where you sometimes get scared of it if you're bringing a comp that says, all right, want a kite, we want to make sure that there's no webs that can get us down. Well, if you're, say, rapid lights, they can kill the Hyena, so the webs won't be the problem from there. But you can't just alpha Loki off the field. That's, I think, what the concern you're seeing from people.
That's very true. Quite a resilient little ship. Obviously, does I think still pay the unfortunate tax of being associated with that notorious Tinker we saw years ago. Not able to also make use of its logistics module at all. That being restricted to the frigates and the cruisers. But now, also just touching upon the bans here, Mario, with aggressively Meteor banning that Scimitar, Widow, Hyena, Scarf Egberts banning the Armageddon, Barghast, or Neros. There's obviously no Gila ban here. We saw Scarf Experts before when they were versus Kaiden and Onichon, once again also leaving that Gila open, and I think showing a bit more dominant force there, especially for that Artie slip. Can we possibly see some sort of double Gila, as I mean, both teams bring the Gila again, maybe one-sided, or is this maybe a bit of a risk play doing it 2 Gila comps in a row?
So I think both teams are going to take a different approach to it. Scarf have banned the Geddon and the Barghast. These are ships that are good into the Gila, right? The Armageddon in an armor comp that needs to run down things at mid-range is very good because it can grab those ships, newt their cap out, and let the team get on top of them. The Barghast doesn't care about them being mid-range, just projects the RHMLs and kills them anyway. On the other side, aggressively mid-tier, they banned out ships that are good with the Gila. They banned out the Scimitar, they banned out the Hyena. And the Scimitar is a hugely important ship if you want to do any sort of shield kiting. And the Hyena, as we talked about before, right, it forces them to bring something much more expensive if they want webs and hurt the overall DPS and protection of their comp in doing so. So while one team is looking to bring Gilas, I think, Scarf Experts, they want to try and get themselves in a favorable position for it. The other team is hurting that comp, which makes me suspect that they want to bring something that isn't Gilas and try and beat down Gilas with it.
Actually, I see what you're saying there. Yep, go ahead, is there?
I'd like to also add in, so talking about the opposition research that I didn't do until just now, Scarf Experts back in the second round fielded a triple Gila comp with a Scimitar and a Hyena. So it's entirely possible that Aggressively Mid-Tier is targeting that specific comp with their ban, saying, if that's your Gila comp, that's the one you believe in, well, you can't bring that one. You got to bring, if you want to bring Gilas, you can, but you can't bring your favorite comp.
I see what you say. It's like we're not really scared of the Gila. It's especially if you're gonna bring Gila in on crutches in against us. We're just gonna kick it while it's down, pretty much. But Gosh. Oh, the one thing I want we've been touching on webs here now. We're speaking about the Hyena, we're speaking about the Belgorn. One thing I want to ask you here now, Azir, we haven't actually seen, I think, any rapiers or Hugans at all. We've seen recons, we've seen Gilas, Gilas, we've seen Curset, and we've seen Rooks. And rapiers and Hugans have some of the strongest, longest range webs. I mean, longest range, not the strongest. That's left to the Serpenta ships. Why might we not be seeing these Mimitar recons in the game right now?
I think it's purely a points decision. The recons all went up in points since the last tournament. They're up to 18 points now. And a lot of that has to do with just how powerful the curse was last tournament. And obviously jams being as powerful as they are right now in this tournament, that's why you're seeing Rooks and, even I think there was a Falcon. But it just simply is far too expensive. You're paying 18 points for what is essentially a cruiser slot because you're limited to 3 of those. And it's a paint that you can get out of your Hyena, and it's webs that you can also get out of your Hyena. It's just not worth it. And I think a lot of teams probably experimented with it and then realized we just don't have the DPS backing that web up.
Now, Murray, I think most of the audience knows the answer to this question, but is there any place for the Gallente recons, even if they have that scram bonus on them?
It's really rough to find an opportunity to use them. The main issue is that you cannot script damps, and sensor dampeners without a script are by and large useless in the AT. It's very easy to work around them for the enemy team, and so burning your points on that, burning your points on a ship that, a bonus scram is nice, a bonus Tech 2 scram, not actually that good.
Especially when I believe Hicks can pretty much cover that category already.
Yeah, and Hicks actually do damage, unlike the Latisis and the... Sorry, I never use it.
Arazu, there we go, yeah. What's confusing with
no
Zero
damage
here.
from those ships.
But I do want to get kind of a feel from you, Murray. Right now, from what you've seen in the tournament, do you feel like things are going more shield side or armor side right now?
I think there's a lot leaning in favor of armor when the Gila isn't up. It's very rare that we'll see a team bring a shield comp that makes a lot of sense without the Gila. Some people have tried Cruise. It's always been a disaster. The only other composition which we really haven't seen much is the Barghest. And it's hard to read that because it's getting banned a lot, which means that most likely a lot of people saw Barghest comps in practice, got dumped on by them, and said, yeah, let's not see that in the game, right? So people are pretty consistently banning it out. And so between those two comps, there might be some things that Shield can do. But outside of that, Shield Rush has basically been unseen. So you don't have that. And so you're really just looking at these armor control comps, which I think, again, is part of that is the fact that in a 7-chip format, you need to put more emphasis on trying to break through their logi, and armor control tends to be very good at that.
I think that is well put. Armor, is effectively where your slots are placed. Speaking about the shield chips now, we've barely seen any even comp here. We've seen a bit of a Skybreakers. I think that's quite a versatile little frigate, but people just don't really want to use the battleship and the cruiser, even though I think they have some of the strongest tank bonuses in the game. What kind of why not? Why don't we see them at all?
It's because even though I think they're all points discounted as well. Like, I think the Thunderchild is the cheapest battleship you could bring. The problem is you've spent however many points it is, and you have a lot of EHP that can't do any damage because the damage getting spread out is just, you can't focus your fire, and that's usually what you're needing in order to win a match. The reason we see the Skybreaker is it can shoot the Logi drones, which is kind of nice, but mostly it's because you can put 10,000 EHP on that with tackle, and it moves at basically interceptor speed. So that's what you're looking at. It is just the other two ships are not worth their points, even when they're discounted, because they can't do any damage, not effective damage at least.
Oh, it seems like we had a tiny bit of technical difficulties. Teams are on their way now to get into the arena. Match will be underway soon. We're going to be seeing aggressively Material vs. Scarf experts. Murray, any prediction you want, who you'd like to come on top, who you think might be coming on top in this engagement?
I'm a little biased as somebody in Repel, but I think aggressively mid-tier have come out on top in terms of an edge in the banning side of things. I think they've got slightly more thought out strategy. I think they're one step ahead of Scarf Experts there, and so I'm going to give Rogue Capel the edge here, aggressively mid-tier.
And is there, before we quickly head in, your predictions here?
I mean, I think I would be lying if I didn't say I already put my points onto aggressively mid-tier in the chat channel, so that's who I'm going with.
It seems we're all for aggressively mid-tier here. Let's see if it's going to be RIP channel points. But we'll be heading to the arena for game 49 of aggressively mid-tier versus Scarf Experts with our commentating duo of Dujek and November.
Hello and welcome to the arena. We have aggressively mid-tier against Scarf Experts, and with me is November. Aggressively mid-tier opting to not go for the Hyenas that were unbanned, instead taking the triple dad comp with Brutix, Harbinger Navy, Og Navy, Vedmak, Sarmazd, and Malediction.
And on the other side, Scarf Experts have decided to stick with what they know. The Gila was unbanned, and they have bought 2 Drake Navy issues, 3 Gilas, I can't see that, sorry, an Osprey, and a Skybreaker for tackle and to clear drone.
It will be interesting to see if the Hyenas really are Pick-Raban, or if the Triple Daddy does counter it, as some people have brought this comp when the Hyenas have been open. And Scarf Experts are immediately going on to Cyclohexanol in the Vedmak, whereas mid-tier are going on to Black Labaxlack in the Osprey, who's taking massive damage and having to use his Ansel charges to keep himself alive.
Yeah, he's being focused very heavily. He's got a couple of target paints on him. He currently remains untackled, but it seems unlikely at this point that he's going to last too much longer. At the same time, though, we can see that Alice Hecate in the Brutix is also dipping very low here in structure now.
Yeah, it seems like this is going to be a trade, possibly, and losing your Osprey and only Logi is a big deal, but the Brutix seems to be going down first.
Yeah, the Org Navy here of Borean is chasing down the Osprey, and it looks like that's going to drop. It's going to be close, then there it goes.
Yeah, Alice actually stabilizing in 6% structure as they swap some of their damage onto Lady Labia and the Harbinger Navy, who is losing his shield, and onto Brainstraw. It seems a bit of a split DPS situation here.
Yeah, at the moment, the Scarf team seems mostly untackled, although now we see Mochisake taking some damage. Also, Brainstraw dipping low.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a waste of DPS to try to split it over so many different targets, and having not successfully done the trade, but leaving Alice in 6% structure, at least Brainstraw is going down, but Mochisake is not far off, having gone down right afterwards.
I suspect the damage split may have been to try and confuse the Zamzad a bit. So by applying damage across multiple targets, you force it to have to make a selection. It did work out there. They've managed to take down 1 battlecruiser, but trading that for their Gila and their Logi is not a good trade.
Yeah, Cyclohexanol is now in half armor, and the Gila of Silo Kishun is in half shield and seems to be going down a bit faster, trying to boat away and get out of the maximum damage from the mid-tier team.
He is untackled at this point, so he should be able to pull some range. But without Logi, it makes it very difficult for him to continue to stay alive, as we see him dropping into armor now.
Yeah, and when this turns into 2 battle cruisers against 2 battle cruisers, but one of them has Logi, it's going to be harder and harder to get anything down. Let's see if they can get Alex Hecate down in the Brutix now.
If they can do that before they lose Jaxa here, then they may be able to hold it out, although it's looking like that is not going to happen. Although that was a big chunk of damage. Whereas the Zarm is currently trying to keep the Malediction alive. No, he swapped back to the... Oh, it didn't matter.
And with that, that's a lot of damage off the mid-tier team. But they seem to be getting Jaxer down right afterwards.
With just the Drakes left as well, those are the slowest ships on the field. So they will be able to be controlled by the Org Navy and the Malediction. And there's still a lot of damage from the Vedmak and the Harbinger Navy. So it was going to be a challenge. The Scarf team needs to really kite this out and stay away and apply damage from range if they're going to win. And they're trying to take down the Zarm, it looks like here. So we'll see if they're able to maybe take out the Logi.
Yeah, Gohan's Drake does seem to be tackled. There are a lot of the mid-tier teams getting onto him now, closing range. The drones are catching up at least, and he's going in to half shields and is probably going to die pretty soon. I think he's going to die before Rima in the Zarmast if Rima dies at all.
Yeah, it looks like they've stopped applying damage almost at this point on the Scarf Expert side. Rima hasn't taken any more damage, except a slight tick there, probably from some drones. But yeah, it looks like Gohan's about to drop, and once he goes, it's not looking good for Scarf Experts.
Yeah, they won't have the damage needed to kill anything. And I guess this shows that the Triple Dad does have game into the healers.
Yeah, I mean, it's quicker than battleships. You have ways to get in on top. You can apply from distance, which is key. So even if they are kiting, you can still manage to apply your damage onto those ships, which showed the untackled Gilas, while being double painted, was enough to kill them.
Yeah, and there's that was a very long boundary violation at 209 kilometers at least.
Contesting for the longest so far.
I think the longest of this tournament, but not in AG history.
And we're going to see Alexander Chorigan here making his last stand. And that's going to be it for the tournament for Scarf Experts, and Aggressively Mid-Tier will proceed to the next round.
Yeah, Lady Libya just very slowly boating around the arena with a burnt-out prop, I'm told.
All right, and that is it for this match. We're going to send it back over to the desk so that we can hear their thoughts.
And welcome back, everyone. Congratulations to Aggressively Mid-Tier, knocking Scarf Experts out there. But Chad Hammercock reaching 214.5 kilometers on his boundary violation there. So pretty good for that speedy boy there right now. Azir, gonna pass it over to you here now. We actually saw, I think the band's pretty much playing out here how we were talking about it before as well.
Yeah, I mean, so we thought that maybe Aggressive Mid-Tier was expecting Gilas and that they banned accordingly, and I think they got exactly what they were wanting. They're up against a triple Gila comp. I'm going to assume that they practiced against Gilas with that triple battlecruiser comp and saw that it had some success. And I think Scarf, I'm not sure, I wouldn't necessarily call it a mistake, but I think they maybe overlooked something when they still brought Gilas, even with those bans, basically saying, hey, please bring the Gilas, let us kill them. So I think maybe they could have made a different decision, but I think the comp they brought was actually a very good comp. The Drake and a Drake Navy together, triple Gila, like everything about that looks like something that would be very effective. I just think they may have been caught a little off guard by a team that was prepared for what they wanted to do.
And Maria, I know you were also talking about those bans before, giving quite great insights for us here. Did that pretty much play out how you were expecting it, or was there a bit of surprises there on the Storm the Grid when the team showed up?
Yeah, it was pretty much how I expected. I particularly like Tempest, right? They've never banned Gila this tournament. They've brought that same comp every single time. And they know that people think the Gila is strong, so clearly they thought that it was a counter. And we finally ended up seeing it here, where the Gila comp, particularly once it had lost a couple of the important support factors that make the Gila comp so strong in the Simi and the Hyena, really just struggled to find a way to win the match.
I do want to speak here now a bit. Oh, excuse me. Going a bit blank here for a moment. Azure, we saw obviously tackle pilots on both sides. We saw the Skybreaker on Scarf Experts, and the Malediction on Aggressive Mid-Tier. But these pilots, it seems they're trying to do different objectives to kind of help their team. I'm not sure if you can speak to that, if you were noticing what these tackle pilots were actually trying to do individually.
I actually was looking more at the positioning of that Zarm that match. I mean, fundamentally, the tackle is getting out there to try and make sure that their team can apply the damage it needs to when it needs to do it. I certainly saw that I think it was a Malediction, some tackle frigate was tackling the primaries on those the Gilas when they were being primaried towards the end of the match. I'm a little surprised that the Gilas didn't just rapid light them to death, but maybe they weren't fit for it. The Skybreaker, obviously what he needed to do was get tackle out on that Zarm, because they needed to win the Logi trade, and he just wasn't able to do it. However, I would like to say shout out to him. I believe that is the record for this tournament, 114.5 kilometers on his boundary violation. So good job with that, at least.
I think also what I was alluding to, we saw actually right off the bat there, the Malediction from Aggressive Mid-Tier, instead of diving in for the enemy team right off the bat, taking advantage of the team's ability to track and apply DPS at range, not having to rambo in, they actually pulled it to the side, looking to maybe skirt around, and actually went right for the enemy Skybreaker. Well, Aggressive Mid-Tier seemed to not really need that long-range tackle or, to put their tackle so far forward, instead just negating Scarf Experts' ability to apply onto them. Sorry, Mario, I interrupted you. I'm not sure what you wanted to say there.
Yeah, really, basically the same thing, right? Just the ability of them to use the Malediction and leverage the advantage that the gun comp has over missiles, right? Which is that once they have that Skybreaker pinned down by the Malediction, it's very, very easy for them to kite away from the missiles as DPS starts coming in on the target, which buys them time just in terms of how missile volleys work going towards the target. And also, at some point, they can also get out of range of those missile volleys as well and make sure that they can get saved, even if they end up in very low structure, like that Brutix was, right? And in the meantime, right, their gun volleys are much more consistently applying. And once they can get that DPS on target, knock out those first couple ships, it becomes very, very easy for them to win the match.
The Brutix that was taking all that damage right initially, he immediately burned back past his Logi, and the Zarm with that increasing spool was able to rep him back up fully, and then send him right back into that fight. And again, he was untackled, so he was able to do that.
Well played there with Lazarm as well. Yeah, like you said, those reps keeping that Brutix right. And I think while we saw the Harbinger die there, unfortunately, it doesn't have the added hit points and buffer bonus as a Navy battle cruiser does. So unfortunately, the weakest link there, not giving his Zarm enough time to split him, just not having the buffer. But for the upcoming match now, what we're going to be having, we're going to be seeing Game 50. It's going to be Esports Pitopia versus Volt A. And just to touch on the games that were happening before here. So yesterday, as we saw Esports lose, unfortunately, in the upper brackets against I Only Need Two Comps. I Only Need Two Comps brought a combination of the Hyperion, Zarm, Drakavek, Organ Navies with Jorger and Tyrannus, where we saw Esports Pitopia bring once again, this was the second time I think they brought it, their Scythe Fleet no Logi comp. Unfortunately losing there. Do you think we can maybe see another no Logi comp attempt here by Esports Pitopia, or are they maybe just trying to cruise through the winner bracket, see how far they could get with it?
I don't think we'll see that. I fundamentally think a no Logi comp is just asking for trouble, because basically you set yourself on a timer, and if you don't kill stuff fast enough, you lose. There's no way to get around it. And on the other side, Volta, they've flown a Widow comp in the second and fourth round and have done well with them. And I don't think a no Logi comp up against a Jam comp is a recipe for success. So I would be very worried about seeing those jams, and I don't think that I would be bringing a no logi comp.
Well, it will be Volt A. Volt B was the team we saw yesterday rocking the Widow. Volt A yesterday we saw rocking the Shack budget Rook as well. Sorry. Actually both Volt teams running the same comp. Now that I am looking at this, is this collusion that we have? No, I'm kidding. Actually, but yes, the exact same comp of the Shack, Guardian, Rook, Droger, Pontifex, Vengeance, and Malediction. So, Murray, theoretically, let's say Volt's team of the Lashak Guardian Rook goes up against Esports Patopia's Nobology comp with the Scythe Fleets and an Abaddon. Who do you think's going to come on top here? Is it just a rock, paper, scissors matchup on paper, or will it come down to tactics if they feel like that?
So I'm going to actually get ahead of you a little bit here because we definitely won't see that, as Volta have banned the Scythe Fleet issue. And so unless Esports Patopia has a different ship that they really think can easily fit into that slot, they're going to have to mix it up in terms of comps. That said, they could try and do something with like Stabbers, the regular version, maybe adding another Stabber Fleet issue.
Ogre Navy
Now,
issues.
Caracal
I
Fleet,
will
maybe?
say, I think ECM comps tend to struggle against that kind of all rush, all damage, because ECM comps have very low DPS. And what you really need is to try and knock out some of the damage from the lower tanked ships in that comp. The Scythe Fleet issues, the Stabber Fleet issue, these things don't have a lot of EHP, but they're still almost 50% of the comp's damage because they just do so much raw in-your-face DPS. And so what happens is the ECM comp takes too long to kill those ships, and in the meantime, even a single Stabber Fleet issue, right, gets on top of the Blackbird, puts a huge amount of DPS pressure on it, the rest of the ships dive the Widow, and it can very quickly spool out of control as they lose a jam ship or lose a DPS ship, and once that comp starts falling apart, it becomes much, much harder for the ECM comp to win. Whereas, on the other side, if they lose a ship or two early on a no logi rush, it doesn't change their plan. They're still doing the same thing. And it becomes much more easy to execute.
Well, now speaking actually about the match we saw with Esports losing yesterday against I Only Need Two Comps, we saw the APOC and the Hyperion pretty much get negated into their own little brawl while was happening. Esports was doing quite a good job of cleaning up. Unfortunately, they ended up leaving that Hyperion a direct effect to loss, and the Hyperion just able to tank for the win here. Now, Azure, we've seen the Hyperion just no one's been able to kill that. Let's say Esports Utopia, theoretically, they sub in some other kind of high faction cruiser for that side fleet. They go again for this no logic comp, and they come against Hyperion. Are they still probably going to be looking to just dodge it, see how much damage they can do? Or do they just maybe, I don't know, take a lesson from yesterday, see if it's better to just take a thing off the grid while you have all your DPS right there?
I think they'll probably go straight for the Hyperion if that's something that's on the field. The only other choice there is maybe if you can get to a Logi. So, if you kill Logi, obviously it makes killing the Hyperion a little bit easier. But yeah, fundamentally with the Hyperion, with its local rep bonus, you have to have a critical mass of DPS to overcome its local rep before you even have a chance at killing it. And once you've lost half your comp because you don't have Logi, there's nothing you can do. Like, it just sits there and lives. And meanwhile, it's slowly killing whoever's close enough to shoot it.
As well, kind of risky plays, like you say as well. We'll have to see what they're actually applying. Teams are actually arriving in the arena now, so we won't be rambling on here too long. So it's going to be game 50, Esports Patopia versus Volt A. I hope everyone's predictions are in for who's going to be winning. Good luck on everyone's channel points, and we're going to be heading to the arena now with a commentating pair of Dujek and November.
All right, welcome back to the arena. I'm November. I'm joined here by Dujek, and we're ready to watch this elimination match between Esports Peptopia and Volta. And I'm looking at the Volta side, and they have brought with them a Vindicator, a Guardian, a Curse, a Droga, a Pontifex, a Blackbird, and a Malediction.
And for Esports Patopia, they have an Apocalypse, a Harp Navy, a Brutix Navy, 2 Osprey Navy, a Stabber Fleet, and a Dramiel, proving that the discussion we were having on the panel earlier was very accurate in what they could do with the bands that were here. And interestingly, they've come in at a very acute angle. These teams are very close to each other compared to the furthest they could be away. So this is going to be fast and it's going to be bloody.
It's interesting that the Vindicator chose not to come in at 0, but it looks like they're rectifying that now as they burn directly into the other team.
We're going to have to see what they go for as the first target. Crazy Vani and the Blackbird, having lost half their shield, and probably going to be one of the earlier targets, whereas the Vindicator seems to be going straight onto the Apocalypse of Alistair, putting those massive blasters to good use.
It looks like Crazy Vanya is pretty heavily tackled here. However, the Curse of Tasty Bat Soup is trying to do some work, neuting out the tacklers to maybe get the Blackbird free, but it seems highly unlikely at this point in time.
You wouldn't imagine that trading a Blackbird for an Apocalypse is a great deal, but the Volta team doesn't have that much damage, and some of it, while the Drog are doing quite a bit of damage, is kind of slow to apply, and only the Vindicator seems to be on the Apocalypse of Alistair, as Crazy Vanya is going into low structure, not armor.
Yes, the fight has kind of developed into 2 separate mini-brawls, one between the battleships and one up here between all of the support ships, as we see the first kill, a Dramiel from Peptopia going down.
Yeah, the tackle ships are living a dangerous life here, kind of trying to prevent a lot of the damage from going out. Starfleet Commander being shot by Alistair and the Apocalypse because that is what he can easily get onto, and Jason Osran, who is bouncing back and forth in half armor, being repped and taking more damage, is not dying. And I think that if Volta kill the Apocalypse now before they lose anything else, they're in a really good position to take this match.
And is one of the challenges of these all-in damage comps is that if you just don't kill something quickly enough, then you're placed behind a great deal. And so now Volta will still have their Logi up, still have their battleship up, and potentially still have their Blackbird up. And they can do whatever they please after that. They have enough tackle to hold down the Peptopia ships, to let the Vindicator get in range and apply. And so it's going to be very challenging for Peptopia to pull anything out of this.
I think we have to give a good shout out to Tasty Bat Soup here and the Curse, as Crazy Vanya and the Blackbird dies. Tasty Bat Soup seems to have a full tracking disruption setup and is really making Gemma Dawson and Wraith Anakin's lives difficult and making it so that they can't apply their DPS. And the Newts are eventually going to shut off some of their guns as well, putting out a lot of pressure there.
And we saw that really take effect. It took a long time for them to kill that Blackbird. And while it did die, that was time that they really needed to be killing other ships to have a real chance in this fight.
The Vindicator, having polished off the Apocalypse, is now boating back into this huge melee where all the ships are basically on each other at very short ranges, and he's just going to grab a hold of Gemma Dawson and the Harbinger Navy, I think, and just pummel them to death.
Yeah, the Brutix, I mean, they're going to try and apply damage here, but as we see, one of the Osprey navies going down there as well. It seems like the lives of the Peptopia ships are short at this point.
Yeah, and they would be expecting that, having not brought Largy, but they were really hoping to get more than a single Blackbird off the field in that time.
Yeah, that struggling to kill that Blackbird right at the start seemed like just the real, the game was almost decided right at that point. Also, when the Vindicator was able to go and sit on top of their main DPS battleship as well, the Vindicator is always going to win that fight, so...
Yeah, the Stabber Fleet issue has gotten a hold of this Guardian, and they are doing some work on it, but you have to think that Volta, having seen several of the Serology games so far in this tournament, as Sarian in the Osprey Navy also dies, there's not that shock factor. for the first game, you warp on field, you see that they have all DPS, you have no large against you, you might not be ready for that. But they were ready here.
They were very ready. We see that slowly the Guardian is being soloed by the stabber of Fubuki Waifu, but the number of rep drones that he has on top of him are going to make it all but impossible to kill him, as we see him pulling back above half armor now.
Yeah, good fights and well fought and good game are being thrown around in local here, and Crazy Vanya saying that they were dual tanked with no jams.
If that is true, that is quite the bait. As we see the Stabber fleet issue go down, the Brutix of Rift is sure to follow afterwards, which leaves just Gemma Dawson, who, if is not tackled, should make a run for an MJD beacon at least and try and break a record.
Yeah, this there's not much more to say. The two last chips of Petopia being hammered down, and Volta comfortably through to live another day.
Yes, we'll certainly say that is a lot of rep drones on that Guardian. Rep drones are very strong.
Would definitely be nice to have some smart bombs right about now.
It would be. As we see, the remaining two battle cruisers here are both being shot at the same time. It looks like Gemma is probably going to be the first one to go, but we'll see who can win that race. Looking at the... Oh, I thought for a second maybe the Vindicator had burned its guns because it wasn't firing, but now he's shooting again, so...
Maybe just getting a reload off.
Yep. All right. I think that's just about going to do it for this match here. So as soon as Rift dies, we're going to send it back over to the desk to get their thoughts on this fairly one-sided affair. That's all for Esports Peptopia.
And welcome back, everyone. I'm not Jason Orzon. Neither of my co-commentators, Jason Orzon, but we just saw Jason Orzon. So here, Murray, we were definitely commentating about this no logic comp, the potential of this sort of matchup versus maybe control classic armor style. And definitely a substitute kind of occurring that we talked about. But any kind of key mistakes to the application, or was it just this is the end of the line and they got a bit lucked out on those previous no logic showcases?
I think there were two big things that happened at the start of the match that were very important. The first was the choice to dive on the Blackbird, which wasn't necessarily wrong in a vacuum, right? But word on the street is that Volta had actually done a bit of prep on their own. They knew the Blackbird was going to be first, and they basically just full brick tanked it with no jams, no utility whatsoever, right? In order to buy themselves a lot of time. The other thing we saw, which is something that we saw in the last match that this comp lost, was the battleship getting picked off away from the rest of the group by the battleship of the other team. In the last case, it was a Hyperion. In this case, it was a Vindicator. But in both those cases, eventually that battleship going down meant a lot of DPS off grid, and it gave the battleship of the other side something useful to do early on. Whereas if that Vindicator had spent a lot of time trying to chase Stabber fleet issues, trying to chase Stramiels early on in the match, it can very easily just not run them down, because a lot of those ships are very quick and take a lot of time to actually get DPS onto those targets. Whereas it can be much more useful when it's just holding the other battleship away and slowly making sure that you're winning the match through there. And some of that too is Alasker in the Apocalypse. He probably should have known that was coming and tried to buy himself some more time on his end. But at the end of the day, he ended up getting caught, held down, and that was a big negative in the match for Esports Petopia.
To Esports credit, though, I kind of assume that that's the reason they're taking the APOC over something like an Abaddon. The APOC having an optimal and tracking bonus. I actually wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't no prop APOC that's just full tracking in order to apply to the DPS, whichever the cruisers choose. But is there your kind of thoughts on maybe the target priority, the kind of decision there between the Blackbird and the Guardian? Which one you think would have been better? Obviously, hindsight's 2020, though.
But yeah, so I mean, once you know that it's a bait bird, not a blackbird, obviously you just ignore it. But you don't know that when you're on the field. So again, echoing what Murray said, yeah, in a vacuum, it's absolutely the right call to kill that blackbird first because it's just going to cause you problems. But yeah, I think what happened is they got to the blackbird, they killed it. Fair enough. But then while they're there, everyone else gets tackled because everyone's sitting at 0 on a blackbird.
Right.
And at that point, the Guardian has burned away, and now the next target you have to kill is that Guardian, and it's free and clear. Your Dramiel's already dead. You have no tackle to go out and get it. Eventually, the Stabber got over there, but he was getting tracking disrupted, so he wasn't doing anything. So I think it maybe a mistake in the sense that the Dramiel didn't go get that tackle on that Guardian once the Blackbird was caught by everyone else.
Now, speaking about the tracking disrupting there, Murray, I actually want to speak. I almost feel like this curse, the subtle MVP of this match, I want to feel. How do you feel like the curse would have done, or that slot would have been, if it would have been, let's say, a rook going for a double ECM, if it wasn't, let's say, a bait blackbird? Did the curse actually fulfill its role there in that slot there, or, would a rook have been just as devastating?
So I think the curse has two big advantages over the rook in this case. The first is the consistency, right? In a world where the battle cruisers that it was targeting are short range weapon fit, TDs are pretty much useless because the difference between being 5 kilometers away and 3 kilometers away in terms of doing damage doesn't really mean that much because you're getting at 0 anyway. But when those battle cruisers are trying to hold at a bit of range, you can TD them down, force them in much, much closer, and also just cut their DPS by quite a bit because those longer range weapons have worse tracking as well. And so the consistency there, and then the other key component is that the curse does actually have a fair bit of a better tank than the rook. It's got more slots in the lows to use towards it, and you can kind of build a better tank around what you're doing on that than you can on a rook. And so it makes itself a less appetizing target. Whereas if you've got a rook and a blackbird, both of those are very easy targets, and it can become very difficult for those ships to survive.
We'll put there. So we're going to be now taking a bit of a look at the upcoming match and the players in it, well, the teams in it. It's going to be Game 51 coming up soon. It's going to be Spectre Fleet versus Paper Numbers. Having a bit of a giggle here at these bans here. So Spectre Fleet has gone for the Scorpion Gila and the Belgorn ban. Paper Numbers, the Scimitar, Barghest Curse. So I'd say kind of vanilla bans here from Paper Numbers. But is your anything kind of standing out to what Spectre Fleet's banned here against Paper Numbers?
Well, so they banned a Balgorn, and as mentioned earlier, Paper Numbers apparently has a very good Balgorn pilot. So I think maybe they saw that earlier today and said, nope, we're not having that. We want nothing to do with that. Gila and Scorpion obviously are just sort of vanilla bans, but I'm not sure. That might be the first Balgorn ban we've had this tournament.
No, I don't believe so. The Belgorn has been banned 12 times already.
Oh, well, okay. That shows how much I've been looking at
It's
that.
all
But
right.
the point is, we haven't seen the Balgorn very much. Obviously, it's been banned a few times, but you saw how effective it can be. So they've decided, all right, you like that comp, you're good with it, you don't get to fly it now.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely going to see. Maybe they can do something else. I mean, who knows? MGD Vindicator is going to be just as fun to watch if it can get its teeth sunk into some sort of logic right off the bat here. Murray, yesterday we actually saw Spectre Fleet being knocked down to losers bracket by a rival. So Spectre Fleet was almost fielding a kind of similar matchup here. They took a Nighthawk Scimitar Triple Gila Hyena Skybreaker against a rival's Nighthawk Loki Osprey Gila. So it looks like Spectre Fleet was relying on that Scimitar Scimitar versus the T1 Osprey, but just kind of pushed down here. So looks like Spectre Fleet has also been relying on this Gila comp before. I'm going to see if I can find one of their comps before. One of the other comps it seems they're doing is Abaddons, but banning the Gila here. Any kind of thoughts or advice you might give Spectre Fleet if they could hear you right now after being knocked down here until the losers going against paper numbers?
It's hard to say. When I'm working on tournament stuff, I'm very much a comp focused and like winning before I get on grid focused person. And the reason I like that is because I enjoy kind of knowing that I have an advantage going in, knowing that I don't need to outhands my opponent, so to speak, and just, fly better. And particularly when you're in a situation where you haven't been feeling confident in the mirrors, it's oftentimes very powerful to bring something a little unconventional or try and get a very good read on what your opponent might bring and bring something to hard counter that. And so I wouldn't be surprised if their best option here is to really try and mix it up and bring something a little unusual. But a lot of teams will often struggle with that just because they can be very uncomfortable bringing things that they haven't practiced.
Definitely so. Paper numbers. Actually, looking back to one of their comps here that they've done, I think on the first weekend, having the little hero rifter there versus Stay Frosty. So nice little ships the paper numbers always making use of, with the Belgium also showcasing there. Is there kind of any advice you might give into these teams in a general aspect? Do you feel the match is won before they even arrive on grid, or are there still measures they can take even though you feel you arrive on grid and you're completely outclassed by what the opponent has brought?
I mean, I would say is very hard to fully win a match before you hit grid. You can get the best comp you can, though. And if you win on the comp, you have the better comp, then it's just a matter of getting your execution satisfactory. You don't have to execute perfectly if you can get that better comp. The only other thing I would say, and I'd have to double check, but I believe paper numbers have also brought an ECM ship in every single one of their comps. I'll have to double check that. But if that's the case, Spectre Fleet obviously needs to be prepared for that as well. So I think
confirming what you're saying here, pretty much they have featured that quite a lot. It seems
Rook or a Blackbird or some kind of ECM in every single one of their comps. So one thing you can definitely do, in addition to going through your comp and making sure your comp is in a good place, is doing your opposition research, is looking at what has this team flown? What did they flown before? What did they fly last tournament? What do they like? And when you know that information about your opponent, then you can start plan, say, man, they really love missiles. So let's plan around missiles. If we're bringing a curse, let's get some missile disruptors on there. So they certainly can do a lot, and I hope that they have.
Well, no, speaking about analyzing our opponent here, Murray, so we've seen paper numbers show the armor control setups for Rook Blackbirds. We've seen them show the, the Belgorn fantastic tactics. I am not sure if I think we might have seen them kill the Gillas. If your opponent's showing this kind of versatile setup so far, not just sticking to the one comp, something like maybe Tempest would have done, what do you even do at that point to kind of analyze or counter your opponent? Is there much you can even do? You just blind ban and hope for the best?
So, generally speaking, there's kind of two major ways, at least, that I tend to see a lot of bans. The first is banning archetype. And that is, sometimes you're going after like certain logistic ships or certain E-war ships that like define that archetype more well. Then there's other ships where it's like that ship is the archetype, right? It is like a Bargas comp. Without the Bargas, doesn't work. There is no ship you can slot in to make that comp work. And so something like a Bargas ban is a very target ban to a specific comp that you don't want to face. And what the really good teams are very good at is early on in the tournament, they'll know the specific comps that they will like most certainly lose to, and then they'll ban those ships. And then they'll bring something that's generally good into the rest. And then as the tournament goes on, you'll see people start to shift off of those specific bans, start to ban archetypes they know their opponents like to bring, and the meta starts to evolve as teams learn more about each other.
So we do actually have teams taking the arena here. Gonna see a few interesting picks. One of my favorite battleships actually showing up here. But we're gonna be going to game 51. Hopefully we're gonna be seeing some exciting explosions here. It's gonna be Spectre Fleet versus Paper Numbers, and we'll be heading to the arena now with our commentators of Mazir and Jintan.
Hello everyone and welcome to the arena for this penultimate match. I'm here with my co-commentator Mizir and we're about to watch Paper Numbers go up against Spectre Fleet. And Paper Numbers here have brought something really interesting with a Tempest Fleet issue and a Baden core supported by a mix of various support, including a Merlin in an armor comp. What have Spectre Fleet brought here, Mizir?
They seem to have brought a little bit more standard comp, having a Leshak and an Armageddon as their core, supported by an Augurer, a Drawgiver, a Pontifex, a Vengeance, and a Crewer. So having these two heavy battleships and a really nice support wing, the match counts down.
Yeah, and we are starting off here, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that Tempest Fleet issue. Of course, it has two utility high slots, so it can either bring multiple newts or something, or even a smart bomb to clear off rep drones if it wants to play more aggressively. But it looks like Captain Shinken in the Blackbird is taking a hell of a lot of damage to start the match, whereas Paper Numbers are going all in on the shack.
I see the red team burning in. That Armageddon was not burning in the right and warp drive. He was probably preparing to do the micro jump drive trick. But that Mauler of CO went straight for him and have him scrammed now. So there's no one is going to do MJD trick right on top of the Paper Number guys. They know what they're dealing with, and the Blackbird is still taking a heavy amount of damage.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit of split DPS here from the Paper Numbers team. They're pressuring down that Draugr, pressuring down that Pontifex, and putting all of their heavy DPS on the Leshak, probably trying to pressure the capacitor of that Augurer a little bit. The Blackbird of Captain Shinken, it seems like he's holding for now, but it's going to get a little more dicey as people get close to him and start to really apply the damage. Oh, and that Aniros, he's in a really bad spot there. It looks like he might be about to get hard tackled potentially by... He is hard tackled. That Crewer has got on top of him.
Yeah, the Crewer having a web range bonus, so he can actually get stuff before getting really close to it. And he's also putting his Nosferatus and Neutralizers on the Oniras, trying to make him struggle a little bit on the cap. But in the meantime, that Leshak is in structure. If they're losing that Leshak, it's going to be a heavy blow and might actually cost the match. The same time, the Draugr is going down as well.
Oh my gosh, so they've sacrificed the Leshak for all the positioning. It's going to be a question of if that's enough. You know, this Aniros hits reps are going to come down slowly as that Crew starts to newt it down. But Rain Rao in the Draugr, he's dipping into a structure here as well. The heavy DPS is going on to the Armageddon. It looks like they're just trying to take out this top-end DPS and just trade it out that way. Wow.
Yeah, it definitely looks like the Paper Number team had this right from the beginning. They countered the MJD play that the Spectre Fleet had planned, and then they just pinned them down and controlled them for the match, making use of that Blackbird to mitigate the damage and still being able to take down the Leshak without losing anything in return. A split DPS on a couple of targets, but the Blackbird is right back to full armor. And meanwhile, the Daoneos was tackled, but what are you going to do about it? It can't kill it.
Yeah, it's going to be a question. You know, there were EC300s as well on top of that Augurer that didn't get cleared. I have to wonder, you know, was it just one lucky jam cycle that was enough to really allow them to break through here? Because the Armageddon now, he's holding relatively well, especially with the guns of that Abaddon potentially being turned off by those ranged newts.
Yeah, we've just seen the Spectre Fleet set up being slowly picked apart ship by ship. They don't really have anything that can do damage when they lost the Leshak. The Armageddon is a drone boat, but the drones are not that strong if it's focused on newts, and they're still easy to counter. Odneos is taking a little bit of damage, but easily being able to repair up with the repair drones. They just can't break anything anymore without the Leshak.
Yeah, it seems like Paper Numbers. They just came in here with an absolute brute force approach, saying, I don't care about your control. I don't care about your shiny Leshak. I'm just going to put two battleships that do over 1,000 DPS in your face, and you're going to have to deal with it. And unfortunately, it looks like Spectre Fleet couldn't.
No, they just got countered from the beginning. I could really see that Geddon looking to do the MJD play, and then the Mauler got right on top of him, scrammed him down, and completely ruined the plan. So paper numbers, they know how to do the perfect MJD plays, but also know how to counter them right away. So these guys are the micro jump drive masters of this tournament, definitely. Unless we
Yeah,
can
no, we
see
see.
someone knock them off that throne. But yeah, really good job for the paper numbers for seeing that threat and immediately dealing with it.
Yeah, what do you think about this kind of expensive but support wing here from Spectre Fleet with the Vengeance Crew? Or those are that's 10 points. That's a Vedmak worth of points sunk into tackle that they weren't really able to do anything with. They weren't able to screen off that Mala or protect their Armageddon whilst he was making that jump play.
I mean, the crew could have wept down the Mauler, but they just didn't do it. So they had different target assignments. They didn't really expect that Mauler to go all in. And that's really credit for the CEO for making a good, strong play right at the beginning. He knew what he had to do and he just went for it right away, not hesitating at all. And that just took the Spectre Fleet the pilots with their pants down.
Yeah, and I've got to give a small shout out here to Sai Kakashi in the Merlin, because it looks like he's running at least 2 remote sensor boosters, and he's putting those right on top of the Abaddon and Tempest fleet issue to prevent any possibility of them being jammed in this match. What do you make of the use of remote sensor boosters here, Mizir?
I mean, it's the number one tool for dealing with countering ECM setups, so it's a really good tool to have when you are expecting ICM setup. You can just put them on the targets getting jammed, and you can swap them around, and having like this little Merlin for 2 points, being able to augment your bigger ships. And with that being said, the last ship of Spectre Fleet was cleared off. It's 100-0 for the paper numbers, showing that they are the masters of the micro jump drive. Go back to the studio.
Welcome back, everyone. Congratulations to Paper Numbers, just sharing their victory here over Spectre Fleet. Unfortunately, Spectre Fleet has seen the end of the line here, being eliminated on this second weekend here. I'm joined here now in the studio by Jintan and Radikos. Welcome here with me. Jintan, opening comments just from coming fresh off the commentating there.
Yeah, like I said, it was just an amazing match to watch there. Paper Numbers once again just imposing their will on the opposing team, much as they did with the MJD plays in their first game. But this time, not even worrying about playing fancy, just ramming 2 battleships right into the front lines and saying, "Deal with me." And Spectre Fleet just did not have an answer to that.
Tempest Fleet Issue, actually one of my more favorite battleships to see in this setup. Just such a little versatile ship. I absolutely love it. Now, Radikos, we saw obviously the kind of ended up being a bit of a battleship showdown there in the sense of just battleships clustered up there. But I believe the commitment happened from Spectre Fleet to go for that Blackbird. Obviously, it being a threat there. But then we saw the Vengeance and the Krur tackle the Onichon of Paper Numbers, kind of sitting there. Now, do you think that the Shack was overcommitting to the spool on the Blackbird? Should he have switched over? What's kind of going through the Shack's pilot's head at that stage?
Yeah, well, if the Leshek is being jammed, then he kind of has to commit right to the Blackbird. But committing on the Blackbird, I think, was something that needed to be done because it wrecks up that whole comp that they brought. I mean, with especially with the Leshek, as you are asking about, it's wrecking the spool. Not being able to assign newts to where they need to go or drones where they need to go, only being able to deal with that sole ECM ship, it's pretty powerful, and it's really the only play that they had. And I think they were just set up to just counter that Leshek, and they knew exactly what they needed to do by taking out the big dog down first and then working their way through the comp.
Well done. Like you said, they're knowing where they should apply that DPS and knowing what they can kill, and then successfully executing the execution. Jensen, we are speaking now a bit about the Kror and the Vengeance doing the tackle. So definitely these tackle pilots doing their job. But how do you feel about these choice of tackle ships? We have interceptors, we've got dictors, we have assault frigates, we've got these pirate frigates, we've got skybreakers. Do you feel a Kror and a Vengeance is a good kind of combination, or would something else serve better in these tackle roles?
It's a difficult one. Oh, sorry. Was that thrown to you, Brad?
It's for Jintan here.
Okay,
Yep,
so
Jin, go.
the Cruel here is a really interesting ship, and you saw it do what it's intended to do there, which is kind of act as like a cut point draugr, gets into the back lines, gets on top of the Logi, and just makes it impossible to move out of a bad position and start muting it down, putting pressure on those reps. But unfortunately, they weren't able to capitalize it on that point because their Lashak was already dead, and that meant that they had no DPS to just reach out and touch that Aneros with. On the other hand, the Vengeance, that's something that I found that in this format isn't actually as good as it looks. You know, you normally do get a lot of value out of the Vengeance in a 10v10 format, but in the 7v7 with the amount of points it costs, you're better off almost going for a Punisher because you're about as likely to die in the Punisher as you are with the Vengeance, and it can do the role for 2 points cheaper. And that could have allowed, it could have allowed Spectre Fleet to bring some slightly more powerful ships in the other areas of their comp, especially given that they'd sunk, 60 odd points into those two battleships between the Lashak and the Armageddon. I would have liked to have seen a slightly different approach there from the support corps.
And now Radicos, I think that was a full Newt-Geddon we were witnessing there. Do you feel that also kind of maybe contributed to what the result we saw there from Spectre Fleet? Would another battleship be better, or a different fit on this Geddon, perhaps?
That's a good question. So with the Armageddon, you do have the opportunity to bring a rapid heavy missile launchers onto your Armageddon, which in our setup that we ran it with the newts and the rapid heavy missile launchers, and we feel that the DPS on that is the trade is much needed for the DPS, especially losing a Shek like that. Like, having any more DPS on that Armageddon would have been helpful in that last comp. But I just feel like the full Newt Armageddon, you're just not using the ship to its full potential and, all the roles that it can fill, because it is a great utility ship. I mean, in past AT experiences, you've seen people use the Armageddon as a flagship because the massive Newt range, how much Newts it can pull, and the DPS that it can bring with the rapid heavy missile launchers on it, if fitted. So, yeah, I really think that not having that on there was something that might have changed the outcome of the match for sure.
Definitely, all the little edges count there just to put the get the victories there. I still feel kind of Lashak's always all the eggs in one basket. But now we're going to be having game 52 coming up soon. It's going to be our last game for the evening here in the losers brackets. We're going to see Volt B versus Rusty Hyenas Gen 10. I just want to touch on, so we see Rusty Hyenas quite successfully do this double battle comp of the Hyperion with the Megatron Navy issue. Do you have any kind of ideas why that Mega Navy might be featuring in their setup right now?
Yeah, in effect, because of the way that the points costs work in this format, it costs you an extra point whenever you bring a duplicate of a hull. So bringing the Megatron Navy is only one more point than bringing two Hyperions. And what you get from that is you get a ship that's slightly faster, does a little bit more DPS, and still has that utility high. It's kind of a rare ship to see on Tranquility because it just doesn't really have a role in the meta. But in the tournament, it's actually quite effective. And I think it also has a slightly bigger drone bay, which is exceptionally useful in the tournament setting because it allows you to bring a full flight of heavy maintenance bots and then have some backups in case those get smart bombed off.
Isn't a faction battleship 29 points and the T1 battleship 25? So two Hyperions would be 26 each, whereas the Hyperion and the faction is 29 plus 25. So it's actually.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
So no points saved there, it seems. So it seems just more of a personal preference of theirs, most likely here.
Yeah, it only cost them 2 more points effectively. Sorry, I did the math wrong.
That's all right. But now, Radicos, also now, when we're talking about these blaster battleships, we see Volt B has banned the Vindicator, along with banning the Widow, Gila, and Zarm. But why do you think Volt B might be banning the Vindicator, especially after they've seen Rusty Hyenas successfully execute this battleship comp without the Vindicator, actually preferring to take their combination of the Hyperion and the Mega?
Yeah, a good question again. I would think that Volt B is banning out the Vindicator because it's stronger than both the Hyperion and or the Navy Mega. It does have a Navy Mega does have a utility high, but the Vindicator has those webs that can just stop you in your tracks and just apply just ram that DPS blaster boat just down the throat of whatever whatever other ship has tackled. And with I would say Volt B has the execution there in their support wing. They believe in them that they can screen those other two battleships off, so the rest of the team can do whatever it is that they're going to need to do. It is there's no Gilas, and there's no Widow, and I would expect to see some ECM here again. And I think we're either in a shield kite with a Griffin or a Kitsune, or with a Rook or Blackbird. Is what I'm expecting to see from Volt B. But yeah, it'll be interesting because just the whole double battleship rush, Galante rush, can be countered so easily, and if Rusty Hyenas is thinking, I really hope they're not thinking to bring that rush again, because they've seen it, and Volpe has had a lot of time to watch what they're doing. So I'm excited for this next match. I tell you what.
Yes, and speaking of what Volpe has been doing here, Jintan, so they've been running this setup of the Shack Guardian Rook, kind of classic kind of armor control setup. Now, do you feel this setup itself is strong, or does it allow you to almost go in, let's say, in a almost, I want to say, underdog position, not caring too much about the matchup, but the amount of control allows you to then, handle, a bit of a bad matchup for yourself? Like, is it actually a strong comp, or is it just forgiving if it's well executed?
What we tend to see is all of the kind of top tier tournament teams focus in, especially earlier on in the brackets, on these control setups, just because they force your opponents to make decisions and you to make decisions in response to that. And they have like a very, very strong belief that if they get to make more decisions, they're more likely to get an edge over their opponents. And that's something that we've seen really go well for them so far. That said, when they got upset by Peugeot Capital Supremacy, that was by them bringing something that didn't require a huge amount of decision making and basically just won from the pick and ban phase that they then executed on perfectly. So it's going to be interesting to see if Rusty Hyenas believes that they are going to be able to make better decisions, or if they're going to be able to bring a comp that they think's beat that. Meanwhile, Volta, then they have the choice of either saying, do we respect these guys, and are we going to bring something, a little more tricky, something that we haven't shown before, or are we going to bring something new? And are we going to bring the old setup that we brought previously?
Actually, you raise a very good point there, just in the decision making thing. So, like you say, the more decisions you need to make, the more chance, you're eventually going to make a bad decision. Like you say, both are relying more on their decision making and experience to carry them through here. Just quickly, as the teams are arriving here right now, Radicos, if we kind of see a classic matchup here of the double battleships versus the control setup of Volta, who do you kind of feel is going to get on top here?
I'm gonna have to say Volta or Voltby are going to be the one that's come on top if that's what each team brings. Just the execution that they have, and the experience alone. Rusty Hyenas have been having really good runs, so it is kind of good to see. I could be proved wrong, but it'll be interesting.
Teams are arriving in Arena, and I think we have the potential for quite an interesting upset here. Most likely, at least some very exciting ships combinations on grid. So we're going to be watching Game 52. It's going to be Volt B versus Rusty Hyenas. The team at the end here that loses will be knocked out, and we're going to be heading now to the arena to a combination of our commentators of Mazir and Jujek.
Hello everyone and welcome to the last match of day 4 of Anger Games 5. And this is Volt B versus Rusty Hyena. And with me is Dujek and I'm Miss. And on the Volta team we're seeing a Leshak, a Guardian, a Rook, a Draugr, a Pontifex, a Warlock and a Malediction. And Dujek, can you tell me about this Rusty Hyena setup?
The Rusty Hyena team has brought 2 Paladins, a Rodiva, a Pontifex, a Punisher, a Purifier, and a Nemesis. which is a tremendous amount of long-range DPS from them.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be a lot of pain they can apply to the Volta team. The big question is, can they mitigate enough of that damage to survive, or will Rusty Hyena actually be able to take something key ship down and get the advantage earlier in the match? And we had 10 seconds remaining on the countdown. We've seen the links go on. The match is about to start, and soon we're going to see some red bars.
It's going to be very important for the Rusty Hyenas team to keep these bombers alive, and that's going to be easier said than done with them being a target to be hunted. And they're putting everything on the Leshak of Panigardet, who's taking a lot of damage to start this match off.
Yeah, the thing is, the Rook is having the ECM that have been used on these bombers. Like, bombers are not known for having a big, strong sensor strength, nor are they good for applying to a cruiser. So I think the Rook can be a really key ship in this case. Even though the Leshak is still like almost 40% damage time in armor. Like, he's catching reps, but it's a lot of damage. We're seeing damage on the Pavel Akapi in the Purifier.
Yeah, the Control Freak Rook is taking some damage, so he's probably successfully jammed a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see. Like, the Paladins can apply pretty well to a Rook, even at range, so he's going to have to take a lot of reps from this Guardian, as Panigardet is doing just fine, whereas Scorch Celeste taking a lot of damage in their Paladin.
Yeah, and the damage is spread on both on the Purifier and the Paladin. And in the meantime, Penny is slowly dropping down, and the Malediction is also starting to take damage. There's a lot of damage going across on different ships, on different on both teams. But the thing is, like, the Guardian. Sorry.
And then Draugr of Ed Reynolds is sitting on top of the bombers of the Rusty Hyenas team, and it's going to be a race here to see if Scorch Celeste and the Paladin or Pani die first. And it's going to put a huge benefit to the team that kills the opponent's battleship first in terms of damage.
Yeah, and we have seen Volta use the neuting Maulers before, and that Mauler is right on top of the Rediva, so it's going to make it really hard for Rediva to apply repairs. I don't actually see the Rediva, so either scammed or neutered out, and that might be enough to finally kill the Paladin of Scorch Celeste and giving the Volt B a team a huge lead.
Yeah, they're splitting a lot of damage, and efficiently too, as Pavel and the Purifier goes down, and they can't both be kept up. And the Rusty Hyenas team has lost like 1,500 DPS here, give or take.
Yeah, and before that they couldn't even break the Leshak, so at this point they might actually already be, the match might already be sealed for them. They didn't have enough DPS to break the Leshak, and now they just lost almost half the DPS.
Yeah, it's not been a great day for Scorch Celeste, having had a microwave fire earlier today and having their, I assume, fake Rourke tackled for a little bit of local chat PvP to start the match off here today.
Yeah, it looks like the Volta team is sitting comfortable. There's a bit DPS on the Leshak and some on the Rook, but it's easy for Redbot 9000, just reload for the Guardian pilot to keep that in going down. We've seen the Nemesis going.
Yeah, and the Guardians are a favorite of the ECM heavy teams that have at least a Rook or a Widow to provide a whole lot of reps, and Sed's motorcycle in the Nemesis.
We've seen the Nemesis taking some reps, like being in low structure, but is he going to be able to survive long enough to actually do something? He's catching full armor, but at the same time the Paladin's going down might not be the best priority. Keep the Paladin alive.
Yeah, they're doing damage to both ships now. Ed Reynolds really just getting to fire his guns and do massive amounts of damage, and the Rodiva can't split reps to keep both alive, and they're probably going to end up both dying as a result.
Yeah, the Nemesis just went down, so there's only the Paladin as the DPS ship remaining, and the Paladin is all also starting to bleed structure. Meantime, the Volta team is the Volt B team is like sitting comfortable. The Rook is taking damage, probably because he has jammed the Paladin, but at this point, like they're not really on much pressure. They're having the control. Like the Leshak has pinned down the Paladin, the destroyers have pinned down the other ships. They are just sitting in comfortable chair. And the thing about these Paladin going down and GFs in local.
Do you like bombers in these comps in the 7v7 format? I personally feel like they're always just risking having one decent DPS frigate or destroyer zoom around my team and kill them in the backline.
I mean, they can be a really good choice, but you need to have something to be able to keep them alive. You need to have a plan for that, since bombers are extremely vulnerable, and also vulnerable to ECM. And in this case, they're just getting countered by ECM, but it can be an effective choice against battleships. I mean, seeing like the Pontifex and the Diva getting picked up, only remaining is the Punisher. It's getting neutered down and jammed and really having a shitty day, but at this point, there's not much he can do as he's just getting picked off.
Yeah, somebody's jettisoned a cargo container next to him. What do you think is in it?
Yeah, looks like they're like maybe holding a little bit back on DPS. Like normally you do that in TQ so you could loot stuff, but at this point, like now they're shooting. Like now they just want to end the match and claim another victory. Comfortable victory, 100-0, and let's send it back to the studio so they can have some clever words about what happened in this match.
Welcome back, everyone. Congratulations to Volt B there. And clever words, I think we do have to say, Jintan, I think some of your pre-match commentary there definitely showed up here, what you were alluding to in the tactic that Volta employs there. What do you have to say there, Jintan?
Yeah, it was a great match. And we saw Rusty Hyenas trying to do some of the same kind of forcing decisions back onto Volta there, with them consistently switching primaries and trying to keep those rep drones in flight between the Rook, between the Leshak, and just hoping that there would be some sort of breakdown in communication that they would be able to pounce on with the sheer amount of DPS that they brought to the field. But unfortunately, Volta kept it tight, kept it lean, and Reload kept them everyone alive with a 100-0 victory there for Volta.
It was looking quite scary there for a moment, Radicos. I thought we might have the potential for an upset here on the hands, because I was actually expecting these Paladins to go and just shred the Rook, while the Bombers might have been splitting some DPS to put pressure on the Shack. How do you feel that this match should have gone down? Do you think they were right to go all in on the Shack there right at the start?
It's a tough call with the Rook and the Leshak in that clamp. They have a Guardian to back both of them up. So really what it comes down to is what jams miss or what jams hit for the Bombers. I think if everything was on the Leshak, it would have went down. That would have been nice. But I'm guessing that a couple things were jammed, and that's why they had to do some split DPS there. The Leshak is, like you've alluded to before, putting your points all in one basket, basically. The rest of it is just support to support that one ship that is, can really just, burn around the whole arena if it need be. Now, in that match, the Paladins went right onto it because they, want to get the newts that they have, the smart bombs, and then their DPS all in the Leshak. But when you have a Rook there, it's really hard to really say, oh, I can just do this one thing. I'm going to focus on this one target, because obviously we'd love that to happen, but ECM likes to make things happen otherwise. It makes a lot harder for the other team.
Well, once again, well done to them. Unfortunately, we'll be left only with the top 8 remaining now. Only teams from here on forth will be placing for that prizes of the pool of 95,000 plex, split up amongst that 8 in order of their placement. We'll be saying goodbye today to Nanofiber Tokens, tournament team, Kaiden Onichon, Javka Mining Division, Scarf Experts, Esports Batopia, Spectre Fleet, and Rusty Hyenas. Unfortunately, they will not be continuing. But we do have some exciting things lined up for the audience in the next weekend. We'll be having some showcase matches where we'll be bending the rules quite a bit. Jintan, do you care to maybe tease the audience of what they might be seeing in the coming weekend?
Yeah, so one of the modules that is specifically banned in the tournament setting is the micro jump drive field generator, which the command destroyers can use, more colloquially known as the boost drive. So we are going to be allowing that for our show matches come next weekend. So we might see some incredible plays with people running up to enemy battleships and flinging themselves and their enemies out of the arena at the same time, which I am looking forward to tremendously.
Definitely so. I'd gonna love to see those showcase matches. As this will also be my last evening with everyone. I'm just gonna bring up my cat for the one so he can say goodbye to everyone as well. But Radicos, before we close off, any quick closing comments?
Really great matches today. It was great to see every team just fighting it out and duking it out to stay in the tournament. You get some teams went away empty-handed. Well, not empty-handed, but just they didn't get as far as they wanted to. And other teams have definitely shown of their execution and gameplay as to why they're still in the tournament and in the third weekend, which we are all very much excited for next weekend.
Fantastic. So, and once again, we just want to thank all the CCP staff for making this possible. CCP Zealous for running things in the background, keeping Thunderdome up for us. Our ISD moderators for keeping the channel running smoothly. Want to thank all our refs, Chocolate Rain, and Sophus, anyone I might have missed in the background. All my commentators here tonight. Thank you very much. We'll be seeing everyone else here back in this upcoming weekend for our finals, showcase matches, and hopefully some more amazing explosions. So everyone have a safe evening, and we'll see you here again.